Hello everybody and welcome to our coverage of the 91st edition of Liege Bastogne Liege, coming to you from the Belgian Ardennes. This is Phil Liggett along with Paul Sherwin and Bob Roll in the commentary box. Looking down the riders here now, just about 100 kilometres left to run. 5 riders in the lead. As we look back here to last year's result, David Rebellin making it a hat-trick. His third win of 8 days of racing down here in Belgium and just over the borders in Holland. He won the Amstel Gold Race, the Flèche Wallonne, and indeed Liege Bastogne Liege. And amazingly, another man is now in with a chance, Danilo De Luca of Italy. He's also won the Amstel Gold Race and just on Wednesday the Flèche Wallonne. Now he's looking to win this one. This is the recent winners of Liege Bastogne Liege. Indeed, this is the oldest classic currently running on the world calendar. Rebellin the winner, Tyler Hamilton in 2003 from the USA, Paolo Bettini in 2002, and now retired Oscar Camazin of Switzerland in 2001. And some very, very famous names on the screen there. Michele Bartoli not riding this year, his first year in retirement, winner of this race back in 1997 and 1998. Now down there in amongst the forest of the Ardennes, there are riders clear. This is the man at the start this morning, Danilo De Luca, and this is David Rebellin. As we go back to the start in Lambert Place in Liège. And Paul, Kim Kirkin, who got second in Flèche Wallonne. 195 riders on the rollout and 25 world-class Pro Tour teams. Weather reasonable at the moment, blue skies. I don't think it's going to stay this way because the forecast is to cool down and cloud and possibly a little bit of rain blowing in.
Well, that's always very much the situation at the start of Liège Bastogne Liège. Nobody knows exactly what the weather conditions are going to be like. These pictures are the live pictures on the return from Bastogne, and as always, nearly always, every year in Liège Bastogne Liège, there's what we call the early morning breakaway. This is the route, fairly typical, moving away from Liège, 260 kilometres, a couple of small climbs on the way down towards Bastogne, but it really does get tough on the way back up. Wiesalme, and then that 5, 4, 5 and 6 repetition of climbs there are the very difficult climbs of Haute-Levée, Le Rosier, and then on to climb number 9, the Côte de la Redoute. An extra climb put back in this year, the climb of the Haute-Levée, which is going to make it very difficult in that middle section of the return up to Liège.
So 2 climbs on the way south, a nice gentle warm-up to this beautiful part of Belgium, and then there are 10 climbs on the way back. And the Côte de la Redoute is an absolute brute, but there are more than 70 riders getting up there to the base of that climb last year, and that could be the reason why the organisers have made the route this year one of the hardest in recent times. The finish at Arns itself is up a hill as we now look down on the riders. As I say, about 100 kilometres to go. We're waiting for final confirmation on that. I'll quickly give you the names. The breakaway started at 30 kilometres today. Stefan Wessermann of Germany getting clear, and the Discovery Channel team rider from Spain, Benjamin Noval. They were quickly joined by Koen de Kurt of the Liberty team, Johan Verstraeten of Lambau Credit, Walter Benito of the Boyga team from France. Maximum lead of 8 minutes 20. Last check we got, it was down to 5 minutes 10. Bob.
5 minutes 10 seconds lead. Benjamin Noval having a good day for the Discovery Channel team. We saw him do a fantastic Tour de France last summer in support of Lance Armstrong's 6th win and record-breaking win in the Tour de France. Benjamin Noval, a very strong bike racer. Been rather quiet so far this spring, but it's great to see him out on a breakaway with none other than Stefan Wessermann of the T-Mobile squad. Both Discovery and T-Mobile looking for some serious results in this year's edition of Liège Bastogne Liège. Very tough bike race, lots of hills, the oldest classic, and an absolutely gorgeous race. And so far we've had great conditions.
These are the 5 leaders, and they're now just starting the early slopes here of the Côte d'Ouane. And I think they'll begin to realise that behind the main field will start to whip up the pacemaking. They had a maximum advantage of 8 minutes and 20 seconds, but very shortly that's going to start to tumble because, again, this is what we call the early morning breakaway. They've been at the front of the race now for around about close on 200 kilometres.
The time here in France now is just 10 minutes after 3 in the afternoon. They've been out since mid-morning. Big send-off in Liège for the 91st time. 195 riders rolling out, in fact, a big peloton. And really none of these riders, with the exception of Stefan Wessermann, we will put in the category because they have had good results, but not of the quality of Stefan, former winner of one-day classic races, and looking pretty strong right now. And that's why we feel he has a plan, or at least his team has got a big plan today.
This is the Côte d'Ivoire. The roads are getting slightly smaller now on the way back from Bastogne, which is always regarded as the turning point of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. They come along some pretty large main roads, but once they get into the strategic points with these climbs of the Côte d'Ivoire, the Côte de Stocker, the roads are a lot smaller, and in fact the descents off these little climbs here are rather precarious.
Finney once had a very serious crash in this race. Thankfully he recovered to go on to win stages of the Tour de France, but it was a very ugly crash at the time. It's a pretty routine, one attack, 5 riders coming together at around about 73 kilometres. It's come down now. We've had no check since that 4 minutes 55, about 10 minutes ago, but I'd be very surprised it didn't continue to now collapse.
I think it will start to tumble very rapidly. Stefan Weissermann out on a suicide mission, really. The man on the front there is Verstrepen from the Landbau Credit team. They will very shortly see the time gap starting to come down, because with this repetitive nature of these very narrow roads, I think the main field, Bob, would really have to go fairly fast, because the big names would want to stay at the front end of the race. 13% is the steepest part of this climb, with an average gradient of 7.7, and it's just over 2 kilometers in length. There is a big strong man, Stefan Weissermann, a winner in the past of a race called the Peace Race, probably one of the top amateur races in the world in its time in the former Eastern Bloc countries, and this year for the first time since the war not actually happening.
Also a winner of the Tour of Flanders last year. Tried to duplicate that success earlier in the spring. He was unable to do that. He missed out on the big breakaway in Paris-Roubaix. That's his favorite race of the year. Stefan Weissermann sitting there a little bit too far back in the field, and that's what drives the peloton in the finale of these bike races. Everybody's so desperate to get to the front that the pace in the group, it just goes up and up and up with each little difficulty out on the race course. Weissermann missing out on the break that was led by the Fassa Bortolo riders, Juan Antonio Flecha, as well as George Hincapie, of course, of the Discovery team, and of course Tom Boonen. Tom Boonen's teammate Pipo Pozzato putting the hammer down, caught Weissermann unawares a little bit too far down the group, and he never made it back to the front, even though he chased for the final 50 kilometers of the bike race. He was very strong there, but he didn't quite make it. And there's the peloton, and look, right in the middle there is Alexander Vinokourov, one of the other stars in the T-Mobile squad that they're hoping can do something today. Just behind him, Oscar Freire, who had a very good Flèche Wallonne.
It may be the presence of Vinokourov here, because he was my guess to really give it a good go today. If he gets half a chance, he is the best ever finisher from his nation in Kazakhstan in this event. He finished 3rd in it last year, so he knows what's in front of him, and that might be the reason why Weissermann is doing the work up front just now.
Arrière du peloton, the back end of the main field, and looks like somebody's got a problem over to the right-hand side there.
I think, in fact, it was Petito there standing on the roadside, Roberto Petito. Not a good place to puncture. Why wait till the hill? He should have flatted on the bottom, shouldn't he, really?
A bit of bad luck there. You can see the leading group of 5 starting to split. This young man here from Liberty Seguros, he's going out of the back. It also seems as if De Kort is also having a bit of a... This is De Kort. It also seems as if Verstrepen is having a bit of a problem too.
Young professionals are now finding the pressure just a little bit too much under the impetus, perhaps, of Walter Benetton. No, on the contrary, he's also going out of the back. Well, so far on the climbs, we haven't had many, but every time over the top has been Weissermann building points in the competition over the little climbs. Remember, there's 12 of them during the day. And now it looks as though that they've gone back to the original 2 men that started the move here at 30 kilometres, Benjamin Novell and Weissermann.
Not surprising to see Novell, the strongest rider here. He's a tough man. We've seen him work very hard for Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France last year. Now today, giving himself a certain amount of freedom, because Discovery Channel, Bob, I think, having a very difficult time fielding on 2 fronts at the moment. They've got a team in the United States riding the Dodge Tour of Georgia. And here, really, when you look down through the list of riders who are participating for Discovery Channel, it's difficult to find a leader. Stein de Volder has been tipped as the leader for the team, but for me, he's basically a rider better suited to the flatter Flemish races.
That's a very good point you bring up, is the Pro Tour has stretched all of these teams to the limit. We'll have to see what effect that has later on in the year, but the managers having to shepherd their troops all over the world nowadays in a number of different races. Sometimes the teams racing 3 different races simultaneously, so a lot of changes coming down in international cycling, mostly brought on because of the Pro Tour. Here we see Johan Verstreppen being dropped by the leading two riders, Noval and Vesseman, and a little bit further down you see de Kort, and then further down the road is Beneteau. So Beneteau, the first to be dropped, looked to be the weakest the last climb, and now he's probably gone for good from the front group. And it's been a very tough stage race so far today. And Benjamin Noval looking very good at the front with Stefan Vesseman.
Vesseman just doing enough here, the greater experience of the two. Not overdoing it. He knows there's an awful long way to race, nearly 90 kilometres, 57 miles still to ride. He's not going to push it too hard, and if Novel wants to push it hard, he'll follow him when he has to. But this is the way it was at the start after 30 kilometres now. The two strong men had 3 visitors for an hour or two, and they've sent them all back towards the peloton. The hills in this area are very, very steep, and they hurt. They're not that long, but as you can see, the damage they've just done. Now, this is interesting because Rabobank have put all of their men up near the front for Bogart, I suspect, as they now keep an eye on the action. It's not going to be long now, Paul, before we see 1 or 2 people start to split away here. That's Decker on the left of our picture as well.
Yeah, Eric Decker also in pretty good form. That's Michael Bogard in the middle. I would think Michael Bogard thinking about a bit of revenge. He was second in the Amstel Gold Race. He's been in the top 3 of the Amstel Gold Race basically since 1999, and you can see the time gap there, and it's obviously because we're coming the hills. It's 2 minutes and 42 seconds, so it really has plummeted. Oscar Freire stuck in the middle, I would think would have to be used as a wild card, having been beaten in Amstel Gold Race, Bob, and not too far away in Flèche-Wallonne, which is not his kind of a finish. But I would think today, having not come up with the goods in the Amstel Gold Race, they'll have to give the chance to Michael Bogart.
Michael Bogart was second in this race last year, just barely losing out to incredibly on-form David Rebellin. So Bogart looking for a big win. He's won Amstel in the past and always been close. This year was no exception. He was right up there at the finish, but just not quite able to get the win. Danilo De Luca won Amstel, then Flèche, and here we see an attack by the CSC team. See Paolo Bettini also not too far away from the front. He's had a very quiet spring himself, and I'm surprised to see that Bettini hasn't done quite a bit better. The gap has come down precipitously for our 2 leaders to 2 minutes and 43 seconds just in the very, very recent part of this race. Quick step bridging across to the CSC rider, and now you can see T-Mobile rider. It looks like it might be that's an interesting place to attack from the side of the road. If you got to do it, though, and you're ready, you might as well give it a try. Vinokurov, I think, is coming across to the front group now.
I think it's the Russian rider Gusov who's made the move here, but they're quickly bridging the gap. The strong men making a move. The Côte d'Ivoire has hurt a lot of riders here. Now, Westerman went first over the top again, so he's building a points competition lead in the Little King of the Hills competition, but 5 men trying to get themselves together now. You get some idea of the steepness of the Côte d'Ivoire just there off that bottom bend, but look how quickly this group has opened the gap. It was all done by the Team CSC man who chose to do a little bit of cyclocross. The gap suddenly from 5:10 has plummeted to 2:42, so they know they've got the leaders under control. They're just trying now to shuffle up the pack and see which ones can get away here. But as we say, Bob, the elastic is stretching.
Well, Benjamin Noval is, I suppose you would say, the least experienced of the 2 riders in the front. He's never actually won a professional race in his career. He turned professional back in 2001 and rode for the small Spanish team Relax Fuenlabrada for 3 seasons until he was brought on board to Team US Postal Service last year, where he was really an unbelievable found because he's a man that we hadn't talked very much about. And then the next minute, he's at the front doing big turns for Lance in races like the Tour de France.
Another Brunel discovery, the director of the, as it was, US Postal, now Team Discovery, a very shrewd operator. Speaks fluent Spanish, used to race on the Spanish team himself, so he keeps a close eye on the Spanish cycling scene. And this was his latest discovery. Excuse the pun.
Very good pun. But in fact, the other discovery was the Japanese rider who he had in the early part of the season in the Tour de Langkawi. They've tried to internationalize their squad this year, and of course it's a very big squad with almost 30 members, and the reason for that is because I think Discovery Channel's ideology is to try and get as much publicity around the world as possible for their channel, which is why they're very much emulating what Motorola did in the 1990s, putting together a team with a whole mix of international characters. Westerman put a lot of effort into this, just having a look down there to see if there's a problem with that back tire. I don't think there was. It seems to get exaggerated by the fact that we're in a very rough part of the Ardennes here. These roads are narrow, very bumpy, hardly used at all during the winter months when they can be very often covered with snow. And as they drop away from the summit of the Côte d'Oine, once they come down into the small town of Stocker at the bottom, the town is Stavelot. That's an indication of the start of the Côte de Stocker, and no respite at all because they drop back down into Stavelot and then immediately start the climb of the Haute Levée, which I don't think they've done for a couple of years.
That's true. It's been reintroduced this year and it is a nasty climb. But the roads around here now are beautiful. But as you can see, we haven't got quite the crowds of Paris-Roubaix or even the Amstel Gold Race, because this is a very lightly populated area of Belgium. Here's Jens Voigt, who had a wonderful time out in the Flèche Wallonne a few days ago, and it looks as though he's come up to this group, and that'll give a little bit of help to the other rider, who I think was in fact Peter Lutenberger, who got up and started the move. On motorbike here, rather anxious to get out of the way, but this is the group that's come together. 84 kilometres to go. Voigt he just loves racing, and he hates it when the pace isn't full on. Look at him waving his arms, keeping the action going. He's an incredible rider.
He's a strong boy. I tell you what, you don't want to get on the wrong side of Jens Voigt when you get into a breakaway situation like this. That is Gusev, who's up there as well, a rider who in the early part of the season was the long-time leader of the prologue of Paris-Nice, a name that I hadn't heard of until the start of this year. Jens Voigt, what a remarkable recovery, Bob, because he was the man who was caught with around about 5 kilometres to go towards the end of the Flèche Wallonne, and here he is again doing battle on the roads of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Incredible
to see Jens Voigt out on the attack, driving the pace there. Paolo Bettini, it seemed like, even having a hard time coming through. Paolo Bettini in the gold helmet from the Quick Step team has gone back through the line of racers. A couple of Rabobank riders, Fausto Bortolo, but it's CSC driving the tempo right now. That could be Mirko Celestino of the Domini Vacanze team coming to the front. So this could be a very serious breakaway with Bettini, Voigt, Celestino, and if that's David Rebellin from the Gerolsteiner squad, that would be something serious indeed. So now the race is flat out, and the peloton scrabbling behind to get back on terms with the second group out on the road.
Well, you just saw a quick glimpse there. The riders come down from the right-hand side there into the outskirts of Stavelot, take a sharp right-hand turn up the slopes of the Stocker climb, and then drop back down into the other side of town. Very complicated if you're an organizer trying to get them in and out of this very small town. There's the race leader's car going round the corner there. That's the corner, the right-hand corner for Stocker, and those people there have got a very good chance, because not only do they see the race going up Stocker, they get a chance there to see them coming down on the other side of the road.
Very sharp turn. Thankfully it's not too wet. Well, it's not wet at all today, which is a big relief. So here's a little chance to see the crowd now. This is where they've been waiting in this lovely town. First onto the climb, the Côte de Stocker, is Besseman and Benjamin Noval, as they now will dig deep here, because I would think already the riders they have left can only be about 45 seconds in front of that group being led by Jens Voigt, and they're looking rather serious now. The race is all of a sudden very much on now, having had our little preamble down to Bastogne and turned around the American tank, which still stands in the square down in Bastogne, remnants of the World Wars, of course, when America came here and repatriated the Belgians.
Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah, there's a bulge coming down here now. It's very narrow, this road, as they go around these left hands. You've got to be careful. This will be Walter Benito. He's still out on his own between the devil and the deep blue sea, I think.
You get a chance to see how difficult these roads are, and it really is bouncing around quite a bit. These roads very much damaged by the coldness of the winter. It's very frosty. Benito panicking a little bit, looking over his shoulder to see what's coming, and it's the express train there led by Jens Voigt, while we go a little bit closer to the front, and these are the two leaders on the slopes of the Côte de Stocker. A steep climb at certain points. It kicks in at 21% gradient. It doesn't look that difficult on a television camera, but I tell you one thing, I'm pretty sure you and I couldn't ride up it now, Bob.
I think I might have to get off and walk at this point in the race. Very steep, and it comes a long ways from the start, and of course there's a number of very tough climbs to go to the finish, and the gap hovering just under 2 minutes right now. I think that will be swept away very quickly, as these two riders, having been out on the attack all day long, very fatigued, a lot of lactic acid in the leg muscles, and you will see a totally different pace from the peloton when they get onto the slopes in just a few moments, led at this point by Jens Voigt and his teammate Gusev. And here we see the attack from the Quick Step team from the peloton now.
Well, this is the hard work now being done by Quick Step, as they're trying now to liven up the reaction here. There's a lot of riders got across to that group, but it's hurt a few riders as well. It is Peter Luttenberger who is up there on the third wheel, and the riders now trying to get clear on Stocker.
Well, you know what? We haven't talked very much about Paolo Bettini, the Olympic champion, since the start of the season. He's on the tail of those two teammates there, Bob, but he didn't look all that comfortable, and he really seems to be having a hard time this year getting into the form that's seen him be a really dominant rider in the one-day races.
Struggling a little bit there now. Look at Mirko Celestino's face. He's been going very hard, putting a lot of energy into this breakaway. The rider from the defending champions team, Gerald Steiner of Davide Robedin, seems to be Fabian Wegman, who's a very good climber. We saw him racing so hard for the King of the Mountains jersey in the Giro d'Italia last year. CSC Gusevs is making the pace. He has had a great spring so far, coming up with big results. And of course, Jens Voigt, never far from the front of any attack, one of the most aggressive bike racers in international cycling today.
Sorry, Paul.
A lot of the big names seem to have actually missed out here. I'm surprised to see a large group like this getting away on the slopes of the Côte d'Oine, because everybody knew this was going to be the very strategic part of the race. It looks as if it is Luttenberger who is in that group, with Carsten Kroon, the representative there for Rabobank. Lotz is up there as well for Quick-Step. Interesting to note that Pietro Cacchioli has got himself into that group, and the other T-Mobile rider in the group is supposedly Oscar Sevilla.
Well, it'd be nice to see him back in the action. He promised so much, and he had all sorts of problems with his team and contracts, and finished up eventually changing teams this year, and now he's on a team where he can do something. Maybe this is his moment. Novell wants to have a word. I think he wants a drink here, and again it's Wesserman first over the top, as he's done on all of the climbs so far. There is our statue, statuette, which Paul was telling us about, of the great Eddy Merckx. The thing about this climb is it still continues a little bit before it starts to tip down yet again. A minute 18 to Group 3, so that indicates that one or two of the riders left by the leaders are still dangling around somewhere in the middle.
But have a quick look at that time gap there. It's a minute and 19 seconds, and that's actually come down almost 4 minutes in 10 kilometers. It gives you just an idea how difficult the chase is at the back part of the race. These guys, I think, have got the big advantage going through the Côte d'Oie and Stocker of being in a small group at the front, because it's less complicated getting to the bottom of this climb of Stocker. Jens Voigt is an unbelievable bike rider. He's had a great start to the season. As you said, I think, Phil, the thing I appreciate most about Jens Voigt, as he catches here, this is Koen de Kort, who is in that early morning breakaway of 5 riders. Voigt is prepared to race from February right the way through until October, and every race he starts, he wants to go out and do battle.
Yes, rather like Eric Zabel. Eric's now getting a little bit long in the tooth to find his great form that we've known at this time of the year. And boy, do the team miss him, because they're not winning any races without Eric Zabel just now. T-Mobile. Celestino, second wheel here on Voigt, and just tucked in behind there will be the Phonak rider, Santiago Botero. Funny thing was, before we came on air today, we were talking about whatever happened to Santiago Botero. Well, here he is in the breakaway. New team this year, Phonak.
New team looking for some extra motivation. He moved across to the big T-Mobile squad a couple of years ago and did absolutely nothing really to show the successes that took him to King of the Mountains in the Tour de France, and of course stage winner. These are the cobblestones through the town of Stavelot, and T-Mobile taking on board a few drinks there. I'm not sure that that was an official feeding point, Bob, but some of these teams in Belgium here have the ability to put themselves in the right place at the right time, so the referees don't see them feeding up there.
Well, Benjamin Novall calling for the team car to come up to hand him some water. He was lucky there that the T-Mobile squad gave him one of their bottles, and little cooperation in the breakaway, so never a bad idea to help out the riders in the break that are trying to help your riders. So Wesserman and Novall will carry on with their breakaway. It was strange to see a rider of the quality of Paolo Bettini being dropped out of that second group on the road, being led by Jens Voigt. Bettini having a very hard time on that last climb and seemed to be clearly dropped by the pressure being put onto that breakaway by Jens Voigt. And it was nice to see Santiago Botero being able to make the change in tempo there, and Jens Voigt going very hard, down to 1 minute and 25 seconds now to our two leaders.
Just look at the gears these guys are pounding as they continue over the cobbles here and climb at the same time. This a very difficult section. This is the climb which has been reintroduced, the Côte de Haute-Levée. 3.5 kilometers of it all, and this comes straight off the back of Stocker. This is going to be tough now, and those boys who've thrown the gauntlet down behind because we have to remind ourselves too that the average speed for the race today is 39.7 kilometres an hour, virtually 25 miles an hour in this terrain. A lot of people are going to pay the price for that.
I think the two guys at the front are going to pay a certain amount of their price too. I think this is Johan Verstrepen. He's also coming back from that leading group of 5. He's being picked up by that charging group of riders. I think, Bob, a lot of riders will have been caught out by the acceleration there of Jens Voigt, because big names like, of course, David Rebellin are absent. Danilo De Luca has not made the junction here at all, and they do certainly need to be just that little bit more attentive, because this section of the race this year is a little bit harder than it has been in the past, I think, because of the reintroduction here of this difficult climb, the Côte de Haute-Levée, which is renowned by the fact it's got that great big piece of concrete separating it down the middle of the road there. It's on the way up towards Francorchamps, and the way the gap is tumbling, I wonder if these riders will survive to the top of the climb, because Jens Voigt, I think, wants to pull it all back together very quickly.
12% grade at the bottom of the climb where the riders are on now. It gets a little bit more gradual towards the top of the climb, but this is coming quick on the heels of the climb just before. You can see Paolo Bettini has clawed his way back up into the breakaway. Wegemann is just tacked onto the back there with Karsten Kroon, and Jens Voigt, as he is always never far from the front, and Santiago Botero is on his wheel, but Jens Voigt allows one or two riders to come through and then takes a monstrous pull. Unbelievably strong athlete.
He's been so strong though, Bob. He's actually dispatched his own teammate Peter Luttenberger off the back of the group here, and Luttenberger is a climber, whereas Jens tends to be just a very strong bike rider. The two Rabobank boys are still there. That'll be Karsten Groen and Peter Winning. Those two riders in amongst that group of, what, 7 riders. That's all that's left.
Just thinking about Jens Voigt there. He probably looked at Luttenberger because Luttenberger is Austrian. This man on the front here, Jens Voigt, is a German. He probably said, well, if it's too hot in here for you, get out of the kitchen.
Well, he's doing an awful lot of work, and he's not expecting any help from the rest. I'm not sure that's a wise situation with 50 miles still left to ride here, 79 kilometres. Still an awful long way to go, but the crowd have taken over the main road here, that's for sure. As Voigt still looks over straight at the face of Santiago Botero, no help coming from him. And this is the bicycle of Stefan Westermann, who still looks pretty cool out there, and so too, I have to say, does Noval. Both not panicking because they know what's going on behind, they know the chase is coming up, they're still riding their own race here, and these two boys look pretty cool. I think we're seeing the foundations being laid here of the decisive moves of the day, and I think a lot of riders back there have sensed this, and that's why Danilo De Luca and Michael Bogart, and I'm pretty sure David Rebellin, have got to try and put matters to rights, because soon we're going to have a select chase group having been made up of only the strong men.
These roads now, you see, we've just come off a very large main road from Haute-Levée down to the outskirts of Francorchamps. But once you turn off again onto these tiny little roads, Bob, here in the Ardennes, these roads are so hard. They're narrow roads. They're very difficult to organise the chase. And that's why I think there's a certain amount of panic in that group behind, because these guys know they've got to nail it back as quickly as possible. Otherwise, a well-organised group is going to get formed.
Well, set at the back here now is winning. And this group here have got 2 passengers now, because they must be aware that Michael Bogart and Eric Decker are racing to try and come up to this group. And this is the group containing Fabian Weckmann, Bettini, Jens Voigt, Karsten Groen, Peter Wenning, Santiago Botero and Celestino. The two Rabobank are not going to help here now, because they've got 2 more on the way across, and it's not that big of a gap. And very shortly we're going to have a very select group. Right over to the right of our picture, in the zigzags of the motorbikes, lost in the middle there, the 2 leaders, then the 7 chasers, and then the big hitters are trying to reach them all. Stunning countryside. It's very hard countryside to race a bike in, but really you come down here for a touring holiday, it is beautiful.
Well, I think at touring pace it is beautiful at around about 20 kilometres an hour. Let's not forget these guys have been riding at an average of 40 kilometres an hour since the start, and it's down to around about 10 or 15 seconds. If you can see the yellow car occasionally up the road, that's the yellow car of the neutral service vehicle, which is right behind the 2 leaders. But these riders here now are very rapidly closing in, and the main field, which is not very many riders left, just further back, they're still only around about 35 seconds behind this group, so it could all come together on the Côte de Rosiers. 17
seconds the gap now. It's just around that top corner, I would suspect, and then we're going to have 9 front runners. Say a lot for these 2 boys though, because there's a lot of racing going on behind on today's Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and they are not closing this down all that quickly. Little downhill stretch coming before we start the climbs again. Vesseman allowing Noval to do his share of the pacemaking. Remember, these two have been out front since 30 kilometres into the race, and here we are now. So let me just say, 160 kilometres, exactly 100 miles now. These riders have been in the lead.
I think just looking at the attitude now, once they saw that red car go past, that red car is the car of the race referee, and that's an indication that the gap is well inside of 30 seconds. Now this is Group 3 on the road. That was Alexander Vinokourov. That's Jörg Yachts there in the dark blue. He's also a man. That's Matthias Kessler going through, and a lot of people have put his name down as the dark horse to possibly do something rather special towards the end of today. And that is something that I really believe T-Mobile have to do, because they are certainly short on a little bit of victories this year. There was Kim Kirken going through, the Luxembourg national champion. Looks like David Rabelin sitting at the back of the group, and he's just keeping an eye on affairs for the moment. Very good tactician, Rabelin. He won't panic at all. He'll leave it up to everybody else to try and do most of the pacemaking. And I still think he's got it in his belt to do something special at the end of today.
Well, he's not going to waste his energy too soon, because he knows we're now entering the purple section of this race, the tough section. There's Paolo Bettini. Looks like a sprinter, is a sprinter, just broken his glasses, but apart from that, everything's going pretty well for him. He is a great bike rider, he is the Olympic champion, and this could be the start of his season now. He's on his way back, his form is good. He's yo-yoed a little bit today, Bob, so he's under pressure, but he looks cool again now.
He did a good job to put his sunglasses back together, going about 80 kilometers an hour with no hands on the bars on the descent. That is quite a talented bike racer. I think I would have had to discard those if that happened to me. And there we see the group containing Bettini coming right on the heels of our two leaders who have been out in the front of the bike race since the 30th kilometer. So there'll be quite a bit different form in the legs from the two leaders to this group coming across. Mirko Celestino now, a great classics racer, has won a bunch of World Cup races in his past. Jens Voigt on his wheel, and the two Rabobank riders still in there. They're playing a very good card today. They've got Bugert and Deckert coming across from behind. So if that is the case, there'll be at least four Rabobank riders in the front group. This is the end of the descent and right straight into the next climb, the Côte du Rosier, and Jens Voigt is going to make the juncture right here immediately on the lower slopes of this very tough climb.
Well, I'll tell you, that's a horrible place to get caught, isn't it? Because now they're going to hit it very hard, and the acceleration might hurt at least Noval. 12% at the bottom, and it's just on at 4 kilometres, 2.5 miles up this climb. 68 kilometres still to ride, and it's going to be tough from here on in. Celestino, let's not forget, his best ever finish in this race was 4th back in 2002, on form with his 3rd place in last week's Amstel Gold.
Wonder what those two boys are thinking right now. Stefan Wesemann in the pink jersey of T-Mobile, and of course Benjamin Noval led the race for 100 miles. I think right now they'll be looking for the team car at the side of the road and the quick way back to the baths. But this chasing group, and this is Eric Decker, who's come straight out of the gap here as soon as they started the Côte de Rosier. He wants to take advantage, I think, as one or two riders were starting to take on board bottles to try and get himself across the gap. They're hovering at around about 40 seconds, the distance between that leading group now of riders and the chase group, which contains most of the big pre-race favourites.
I have to say that Decker's a racer too, just like Voigt. If he senses a slackening of the pace, there's 29 riders in this group right now, and I think they're rapidly pulling away from everybody else in today's edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. And so very soon the winner's going to be in this sort of front group of 38, including the breakaways. Eric Decker driving on. We've got Michael Bogart in this group. Looking down there, though, I don't see the world champion any longer.
Well, we'll have to have a look down at maybe not quite the race for Oscar Freire, although he rode a very good Flèche Wallonne just a couple of days ago. There's Kim Kirken just over to the left-hand side, the Luxembourg national champion. Jörg Yachts very much the leader, I think, this afternoon of Liberty Seguros, but it's difficult to spot. There's Danilo De Luca moving up on the right-hand side. But you could be right, Oscar Freire could have got caught out on the succession of climbs of the Côte d'Ouen, Stocker and Haute-Levée, because I don't see the world champions jersey in that group either.
Well, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. Freire was very aggressive on the start of the climb. He was going well when we got to the Côte d'Ouen, so maybe he had a flat, who knows. Axel Merckx has had problems today. He's had to change his pedal. I believe he broke a pedal at the start, but he got back into the groups. These are the leaders now, reforming, sitting at the back and not looking quite so comfortable now as Benjamin Noval of the Discovery squad. There he is, and he's dangling a little bit now, so the pressure's gone on. Not surprisingly, in the lead for 160 kilometres today. We're almost now at 193 kilometres done on today's stage.
Côte de Rosier, and again it looks as if nobody actually really wants to work together. This is Michael, it looks like Michael Bogert, the style of Bogert trying to get across out of the gap. These guys obviously do have a plan. They probably feel quite comfortable with the fact that they've got two riders in the front of the group, and if they can get across there, that's really going to change an awful lot of the composition and the tactics in that leading group. This is the leading group. Stefan Wesemann just staying in contact there, but I would think he'd be right on the edge of his saddle, and he knows very shortly there's going to be some serious moves.
Ouch. Look at this one now. This is another move. Now this is Vinokourov who's gone clear. That's the tempter, and that's what I think Wesemann has been working hard for all day. Now Vinokourov is trying to thin that group down. Now Rebellin, Bob, was sitting there in third wheel and didn't react to this attack.
This is a vicious attack by Rebellin. Waited for the pace to slacken just a slight amount after the group closed to the gap to Decker and then Bogert. So now a lot of furious attacks being put in, and that's a great move. There'll have to be a reaction by one of the pre-race favorites, Alexander Vinokourov.
I was going to say Basso trying to go away here now. The others are going to have to react to that. This is going to be a tough finale today because these riders are saving nothing.
Well, they're saving nothing at all, and it's rather scary because towards the end we've got the climb of the Côte de Sartillemont and of course the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, and if you don't have any energy left in those legs, they are difficult climbs. I think we may well see these guys taking the risks of trying to form a breakaway a long way from the finish today, which is exactly what the race organisation wanted. Good move by Alexander Vinokourov, who is a great bike rider. Probably didn't have the start of the season he wanted because he certainly would have liked to try and win himself Paris-Nice again. And really, Bob, but I think that race rather strange the tactics of many teams because of the bad weather.
Yeah, it's a horrible weather, horrible start in the spring races. Snow out on the course. A lot of those stages had to be shortened. And look at how quickly Vinokourov has got across the gap to our leading group, going right past Noval as if he was standing still. Vinokourov, no trouble at all to reintegrate into our lead group, and that was right straight from the back group that was probably hovering around 20-30 seconds behind. So an incredible move by Vinokourov. Doesn't seem to be breathing too hard either, so he must be on some very good form today.
Third last year, Alexander Vinokourov trying to put himself in the podium position again this time around. There's the group he left. We saw how quickly he did it. Noval is filling the gap, and this race now knows that these are the first telling moments of the race today. They've got to have the answer, otherwise they're going to be out of it. We're getting up into the dizzy heights here now. Poursuivant, and this is the chasing group, the pursuers, if you like. All looking at each other, always a bad sign when you start looking at each other. Who's going to make the next effort?
Who's the next man to make the move? 66 kilometers to go to the finish. Once they get over the summit of the Côte de Rosier, they've got around about 12 kilometers of undulating road before they get to the next climb. Another one of the new climbs added this year, the Côte de la Vecquée. I have to say, Bob, I've got no idea at all what that climb is like because it's never been used in Liège-Bastogne-Liège before.
Well, it's a very tough finale. There's no question about that. Now the attacks. Oscar Perrault, perhaps from the Phonak team there, trying to get across himself. And look how difficult this is in the front group. CSC coming to the front with Basso not able to do that. Here comes a Phonak rider. I think that might be Perrault. Botero is in the front. He will get no help whatsoever as they go past Noval, screaming past him. Kessler on his wheel. Of course, he has Vinokourov and Wesemann in the front group now. Wesemann has gone back to the front and is setting a very tough tempo, so it's going to be that much harder for these riders to get across.
I would go with you there, Bob. I think it is Perrault who's doing it. This is Matthias Kessler who's hooked onto his back wheel. Won't help him yet because he's still got men up front. Got every reason not to help him out. We've got 9 riders in the front group, 2 more about to join, and here comes the cavalry as well because this time it's Andrei Kashekin from Kazakhstan, so he can at least have a chat with Vinokourov when he gets up there. But these riders now trying to get clear. It's still a feeling of every man for himself. Sooner or later, this is going to all go wrong for someone. Jens Voigt still driving on. Botero and tagged on is Wegmuller.
Well, these guys are still holding on, but they've only got around about a 15-second advantage over the front end of that group, who is now taking this group very, very seriously. In fact, the Phonak rider trying to get across the gap there was Martin Perdiguero, another man who's in pretty good form at the moment. It just seems like everything's starting to come together for Team Phonak, who, as we said earlier, had a very difficult time being integrated into the Pro Tour and only came in at the very last moment. There's Perdiguero, looking very comfortable. This is a very difficult move here as these riders try to get themselves across the gap, and they may well have caught this second group on the road here somewhat by surprise because there's Danilo De Luca. They've got VDB written all over the side of the road there for Van den Broeke, and I wonder where he is these days.
I was going to ask you, any idea, Bob?
He's playing snooker in Belgium at a bar in Ghent. He's not racing his bike currently, even though he has a contract. He's been given a last chance about 15 times, so I don't know if we'll ever see one of the best talents in many years back in the professional bike.
Do you remember the way that he won Liège-Bastogne-Liège a couple of years ago? He absolutely played with the opposition, and that was back in 1999. Oh, boom, it looks as if that man's just had a few problems.
Well, was it a flat tire or the end of the day?
That was flat legs, I believe.
Lights are out.
100 miles in the front, he can be excused. He did 2 very hard turns for that man, Vinokourov, and then Kessler trying to close the gap to this group. 4 guys chasing this group here with Jens Voigt in it, and it looks like they've come across. That's Kessler and Vinokourov from the T-Mobile squad have made it to the front group. Bettini's in there on the wheel of Botero, who's setting second wheel right now.
Well, if I'm certain there was a plan to put Vesselman on the attack so early. It seems so far to have worked. Job done as far as he's concerned, because he's got 2 very strong T-Mobile riders now in the front group, which was the name of the game. So if he were to pack in after a successful breakaway and they were to get the win, it would be a terrific day out for T-Mobile.
This is Ivan Basso here. He's having a nice easy ride up as well. He's just keeping a very close eye on the riders in front of him.
It looks like Damiano Cunego, perhaps the Lamprey rider, winner of the Giro d'Italia, trying to close a gap himself. Basso is coming across with Jorg Jaksch from the Liberty Seguro squad. This is a very select group. It's been very aggressive. The peloton sensing that it's the moment of the race where the strongest riders have come to the front. No matter how far it is from the finish, you have to play your cards when the big names are up the road, like that man Paolo Bettini, and on his wheel Mirko Celestino.
Look at that though. Jens Voigt, he knew, he obviously heard over the radio that his teammate Basso was coming along there. He sat up, went down the group to see if he could just help him, pace him back over the last 20 or 30 meters to make that junction a little bit easier. And the big names are seeing this as being a very dangerous point of the race here, and they don't want to miss out, as we've seen on a number of occasions in the past.
64 kilometers to go. Only the strong will out today. This has been a terrific race so far, and still a long way to go to the finish. These riders now are going to have to hang on in there. This is Michael Bogart, still desperately trying to reach the sharp end of the race. It may not be too long for him, but there's an awful lot of riders here now willing to work very hard indeed. It's shaping up to be a great addition.
It certainly is. There's been a lot more aggression, a lot further out from the finish line than we've seen over the last couple of years, and that's obviously got a lot to do with the fact that they've put in 2 more additional climbs into Liège-Bastogne-Liège this year, making 12 climbs from the start all the way down to the finish, and 10 of those climbs actually come after the turning point of Bastogne. Just coming up here, I would think that Michael Bogert has made the junction here, and this is starting to become a rather large group. Very sensible move across there by Cunego, just sitting at the back there in the dark blue and pink jersey of Lamprey. And he's a rider, Bob, who's just getting himself ready to defend his title of winner of the Giro d'Italia.
He's starting to come back on form. He's promised to do some good things earlier this year. He hasn't really delivered, but now we see that he's in very good form leading up to the Giro d'Italia in just a few weeks. He was the winner of the Giro of Lombardia, a very similar course to Liège-Bastogne-Liège at the end of last season. So Damiano Cunego has finished off last year as the world's #1 rider, and now you can see why. He's a great bike racer, young man, just about 23, 24 years of age, and now he's in a very select group at the front end of Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
This actually doesn't look very good, does it, Bob? Because when you see riders moving across the road and slowing down, taking on board bags like that, it takes the impetus out of it, and it may well be that David Rebellin and Danilo De Luca are being caught out here, because that group at the front has swelled in numbers as riders have tried to get across, and one at a time. Somebody has slipped the move here.
It's a horrible way to ride a race, this, when you mark, because that was Rebellin, couldn't control the groups. And this is the next man from the Boyga team going away now.
Like Laurent Brochard.
It is. It's the team leader. Good move. He saw everybody fanning out, and he's made his move. He's got rid of Rebellin and De Luca.
De Luca and Rebellin making a huge tempo, were unable to get all the way across, and so it was Brochard taking the last possible chance to get back to our leaders. If they would be able to look a little bit further forward, they see that they're going through the feed zone. They've sat up for a second. Valverde there in the middle of the of the screen there. This is the last chance to take an official feed from the feed zone. So we'll see if Brochard can get across, but he made a great move. The gap, however, is starting to climb to the chasers behind De Luca, Rebellin, and Brochard. Probably a little bit less than 28 seconds, but it's going to be a very tough chase for him to get back into here. This big group all by himself.
It'll be interesting to see if Brochard does fly across that gap now. That'll give us some idea. He's got a good chance just now to close quickly, as our man here tries to dodge our motorbike again as we start another little climb now. This is the climb out of the town. Let's see what happens. That's the chase group down there.
This is the Côte de la Vecchie. It's 3.2 kilometers in length. It's very steep at the bottom at 11%, although it's only an average gradient in total of 6.7 now. This is an important time here to try and get across, and once again Eric Decker, what a great battler. I remember a couple of years ago he won himself 3 stages in the Tour de France, and all in different manners. One was from a breakaway, one was in a big sprint, and the other was from a small group. So he's really a talented bike rider, champion of Holland here, you can see. He's a man who must be getting pretty much towards the end of his career as well, and a lot of bad luck over the last couple of seasons. Had to battle his way back from a dramatic crash in Milan-San Remo, which saw him with a broken leg. He had a hard time actually walking, and he was able to ride his bike before he could actually walk properly without a limp.
Well, the work being done in the breakaway by Botero here, which is for his teammate Pereiro, who's sitting halfway down the line. So obviously they're trying to save Pereiro till the last couple of mountains. See what happens. Watch out for the yellow car. Whereas professional cyclists usually let service cars go by because they know one day they might need what's on the roof.
In fact, he may well be trying to think about working for Per de Guerro as well.
I'm sorry, I meant Per de Guerro.
He's a man who is, well, Pereira's been aggressive in the early part of this race, but Per de Guerro, another man who so far this season has not really had a very good crack at performances, but he's now coming into his own, and as Bob said a little earlier, it's a different kind of rider here in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Flèche-Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège is normally the time when you see the stage race riders come out for the first time, and we see the men who are getting ready for the Giro d'Italia and of course for the Tour de France start to shine. There's the Luxembourg national champion just at the back of the group there. And it looks rather interesting here because Eric Decker has got himself most of the way across this gap here. And this is the Côte de la Vecchie, wearing number 91 there, as well as David Echevarria. So this is a general changing, and there it looks like
it's the merging.
Number 1, David Rebellin. So he's actually read the race properly.
They've managed to use just their pure strength here, and they're coming on. There goes Danilo De Luca. That's bad news for the breakaway. Top 2 men, one on form, won the winner last year, now hooking up. Decker's got across as well, who's been the main animator, I think. It's a great feeling when you finally hook up to the back wheels of the leaders. A few deep breaths. Now we'll see what happens. But they did slow down in this leading group, and they've thrown away a good chance, I think.
I reckon when Rebellin gets onto the back there, Bob, Danilo De Luca's going to say a very big grazie mille.
Grazie mille. Thank you very much. Rebellin seeing that this is where the race is, so he's going to have a couple of teammates in there still. One of the earlier attackers, just a few kilometers, Stefan Wegman, will be up there. So De Luca, however, I don't see a single other Liquigas rider, and that's if he gets a flat tire or if it gets very aggressive, he'll have to close the gaps himself. So Danilo De Luca has had a very hard time getting back into the front group. The other riders, of course, seeing that the Liquigas team is not as strong, and then they put in the all-out attacks just in case Danilo De Luca is on the type of form that we've seen the last few days in Amstel Gold Race, as well as Flèche-Wallonne with De Luca winning. Didn't seem to be too troubled by either one of those race courses, but he's having a very hard time being the hot favorite, trying to close all the gaps, counter all the attacks without a single teammate to him out.
A guy I've just seen there riding second wheel, first time I spotted him, Alejandro Valverde is in this group as well. That's more trouble, and Cadel Evans is also riding on good form now, and long overdue for a big success. There's all the names now. They've worked them all out for you, but Ivan Basso is here, and so too, of course, now are the bigger names as well.
Look at that there for Team Phonak. Oscar Pereiro, Botero and Per de Guerro. Joaquin Rodriguez, Paolo Bettini with 2 teammates, Mark Lotz and Peter Sinkovic, who's been riding pretty well recently. Jorg Jacks and Angel Vicioso. All of the big names seem to be moving into this leading group. Alejandro Valverde is completely and utterly in the group. We've got now around about 17 kilometers where there is no real official climb before we get to the Côte de la Redoute, but these false flats are very, very difficult. And I think it's on this section here that if you're not attentive, you could see the reforming of another serious move. And I'm surprised to see that man Jens Voigt has still got some power in the engine room, Bob.
Well, now the other teams are going to have to chase. Vinokourov getting across here to Jens Voigt. Here's a replay of the attack coming on the right-hand side of the road. Jens Voigt, so aggressive, so strong. It's amazing that he can put an attack like this after being up the road attacking throughout the finale of this bike race. And it's Vinokourov countering the move by Jens Voigt, trying to get back on terms with the big, strong rider formerly of East Germany. And now he's on the CSC team. So the German rider and the Kazakh man now in the front of the bike race. Their team can now sit back, sit on the wheels, and the other riders will have to chase.
Eric Decker done the job of getting his teammates across here, and I think he's under a spot of brother right now because he's not been able to stay with the group because of the acceleration there coming from Jens Voigt. Jens Voigt, by the way, a couple of years ago was voted the best amateur cyclist in the world, and I think he's proving that as he continues with a great career. He's a tough bike rider. He does not worry at all about keeping a little bit of caution, a little bit of energy for the end. He just goes out on the attack when the legs feel good.
Never say never for Jens. He's a fabulous bike rider. Rode amongst the Australians once on the first ever Australian team, so he speaks extremely good English. Looks as though we've got a spot of bother at the back again here now. Riders are coming off one after the Lotz was up with those leaders, and he's going the way of Eric Decker. Poor old Eric got caught out a bit there. And this is the face of Jens Voigt, and again it's the speed of this aging German, I mean that in the nicest terms too, who's now beginning to hurt the rest of the field. There's the earpiece. He's not listening to his favourite disco music, by the way. It's every time he sits in the saddle, the director probably shouts at him to get out and keep pushing on. It's 53 kilometres. Watch out for the guy at the back. He's got great form. David Echebarria, little man who can climb and sprint at the same time.
Echebarria is a tough bike rider. In fact, he rode very well over the last few weeks, and he got himself a very nice place at the end of the Flèche Wallonne just a couple of days ago. He's the kind of bike rider who will be able to sit at the back and not pay too much attention and conserve a certain amount of energy and then try and use it down towards the end. He got himself a big win just recently in Spain in the big race, the Tour of the Ambaretia, one of the big races just before the start of the Basque Country Tour. Lining out this area in between the Côte de la Vaquée and the Côte de la Redoute, Bob, is certainly no flat part of the road. There's not very much area where the riders can actually get a breather on a race like this.
Very tough section of road here. False flat, as we call it, slightly uphill. Vinokourov struggling to get on the wheel of Jens Voigt. Both of these riders putting in this attack so that the other teams are obliged to chase. Of course, if they don't chase, these are two of the strongest bike racers in the entire classic Liège-Bastogne-Liège today. The other teams like Liberty Seguros will have to get organized and do a little bit of chasing themselves. So that's, I'm sure, why Jens Voigt has been asked to go forward to give Ivan Basso a chance to catch his breath. Of course, CSC or T-Mobile will not be involved in the chase at all. Matthias Kessler, the teammate of Alexander Vinokourov, might be on the better form of the two and is being sit back there now with Rebellin, with Michael Bugert, with Danilo De Luca, waiting to see who's going to organize the chase of our two leaders now. And it looks like Santiago Botero from the Phonak team, who has two very strong teammates himself, is doing the brunt of the pacemaking, trying to close the gap to Voigt and Vinokourov.
Two riders up front now then, Voigt and Vinokourov. Remember that Jens Voigt is German. No Germans won this race since 1979. The famous Didi Thurau, who was on the old TI rally team, became something of a pin-up boy during the 70s, and indeed was a great leader of the Tour de France for about 10 days during one of the tours. But these are the legs now of the man who's hurting just about everybody, and this is a rider who really knows how to hurt people. He's one of those annoying cyclists when you're going through a bad patch because he never stops attacking you. Rather like the old Claudio Chiappucci of days gone by. Vinokourov equally as aggressive. Remember, he was the rider who won the stage that Lance Armstrong narrowly avoided crashing into the back of Yoshiba Bolocki in the Tour de France into Gap a couple of years ago. Lance went across the fields. Bolocki went to hospital and Vinokourov won the stage.
Very talented bike rider, had a very good season in fact, with 3 stage wins in Paris-Nice last year, and that coming after he'd been the winner the previous season. Jens Voigt, though, really is a beast of a man, and you can see now the reactions coming here behind, and looks very much as if somebody else is trying to come across there. It was Matthias Kessler, I think, who was matching the moves from Quick Step. Quick Step obviously thinking about trying to get their man Paolo Bettini into a winning position if he can at the end of the day. I'm really amazed, Phil, at how hard they've raced this section of the course, because towards the end there are still a lot of very difficult climbs to go. After, of course, the Côte de la Redoute, you've got those very 2 difficult climbs down towards the end, the Côte de Sartillemont, and of course, if you've got no energy left in the legs, you've got to try and drag your body up this very difficult climb of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, which is right at the end of the event.
And don't forget, the ride up to the line is very hard. It never really, once over the top, levels out until you're up there on the last bend. You swing into the home straight, and then you can forget the pain for another year. 34 seconds the gap. Nice little gap to start with. I think they might stay clear now till the start of the climb of the Côte de la Redoute, and then we'll see who tries to reach them on that climb. It's an out of the saddle climb all the way up to its summit.
Horrible climb, and it's not going to be a big group of riders start it like last year, and that's why the organisation have tried to toughen up this race just a fraction. This is Alexander Vinokourov, certainly looking to try and open up the account for T-Mobile this season, a team which has been one of the top teams in the world, have had probably the worst ever start to the season. Although their man Eric Zabel has been omnipresent, he's yet to open up his account as he's been joined here. Vinokourov here has been joined by Jens Voigt, taking advantage of the descent off the summit of the Côte de la Véquée. And as I said, there's around about, from here, 14 kilometers to go to the Côte de la Redoute.
30 riders in this group trying to close down. So I think that's it now. This is the group which will decide Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and tacked on the back here, Laurent Brochard calling for a drink probably. And in front of him, the hot favourite for victory in the white jersey is Pro Tour leader Danilo De Luca. Had to work very, very hard to put himself in this position, and clearly now wants to try and recover before we get to La Redoute. We'll descend into Romnechon, go across the little cobbled square there, round the back door, up under the bridge, and then the climb is upon us. And it'll be interesting to see whether De Luca's left himself with enough power to go with the move, which surely is going to try and form on La Redoute. It's going to be good fun on La Redoute. If you're watching, it could be a very serious situation if you're in that chase group. 30 riders in that group just behind, being driven on consistently here by Santiago Botero, clearly in favour of 2 very strong teammates in this group. He'll expect them to make a move, I think, at La Redoute. Basso's poised there as well. Has De Luca got the legs? Kim Kirken, bang on form after his second place the other day, is here as well. They know each other pretty well this week.
Look at Eric Decker, though. Dropped a few moments ago, moving himself straight back up to the front end of the main field. This guy realizes that Michael Bogert has got a very good chance of doing well here this afternoon, and he knows the team needs assistance. It's so difficult when you've been dropped on 2 or 3 occasions to get your mind right to go up to the front and work for the team, but that's why Eric Decker is a man that this team really counts on a lot.
Eric Decker, never far from the front. Botero on his wheel, weaning from the Rabobank squad, and teammates of Michael Bogert there in 3rd position, chasing these 2 men, Vinokourov and Jens Voigt. Vinokourov has done a good job to get across this gap to Jens Voigt. He hasn't contributed that much to the pacemaking because he knows this is a tactical move from the CSC team to soften up the legs of the chasers. Yvon Basso, of course, will not have to do any work if there is a group to try to come and get across who are 2 leaders. Great ride by Vinokourov so far. Jens Voigt playing the team game. So strong, so powerful. It's great to have him on your team. It's a disaster if he's on another team when he's on good form, because you know it's going to be a very attacking situation every time the race gets hard.
Around about 4 kilometers now to go into the town of Remouchon. Every cyclo-tourist in the world knows that Remouchon is the bottom of the climb of the Côte de la Redoute, and I think you know that pretty well, Phil. I remember seeing you do a stand-up at the top there.
Oh, I did 1 or 2. By the time I did the 3rd or 4th take to the camera, I couldn't stand up at all.
It wasn't the words, it was just the breath you couldn't
I
get.
had no breath left. I was riding with the old Motorola team, and I did so many retakes, I was out of breath by the time I finished. Andy Hampson thought I was marvellous at the time. But I've in fact ridden this course they have an amateur randonnée cycle right here. It starts in nearby Tilth rather than Liège, but covers exactly the same route. It's a wonderful day out, that's if you like climbing. and huge crowds turn out to watch just club cyclists go on the route, as crowds nearly as big as Liège-Bastogne-Liège. They just love their cycling in the region.
CSC in a very nice tactical position there, sitting in third and fourth position. Ivan Bassauer, I would think, will be thinking very much about the counter-attack if this leading group of 2 riders gets pulled back into the fold. Jens Voigt getting down into an aerodynamic position. What he's trying to do for the moment is just recover a fraction before they get into Remouchon, and then of course the very difficult climb of the Côte de la Redoute, in company still with Alexander Vinokourov, who I have to say is looking for the first big one-day win of his career.
The descending skills of Jens, the attacking riding of Alexander. Remouchon is in the valley, and then over the ridge is La Redoute, and then you scarper for home if you can do it. But I've got a feeling that there will be an elite group of cyclists trying to chase them once over the top of La Redoute.
Vinokourov a couple of years ago got himself a win in the Amstel Gold Race, which this year has been regarded, I suppose you should say, demoted. It doesn't carry the same number of points in the Pro Tour as races like Liège, Bastogne-Liège and Paris-Roubaix.
I'm yet to understand the point system of the Pro Tour. You only get points for the first 3 places in the World Championship, while you get points for the first 10 places in a minor classic like Ghent-Wevelgem. I'm not too sure how that works. Well,
I don't think they have it entirely sorted out just yet, but I remember when the World Cup point system was established in the late 80s, there was a lot of confusion as to who is the best cyclist in the world, and it always comes down to the Tour de France year in and year out. The big monuments of the sport stay the same, so no matter what they call these races, if you win Amstel Gold Race, that is a huge result that'll stay with you your entire life. You'll probably never have to buy a beer in Holland again. So it's always good for the morale to win one of the big classics. No matter how they set up the point system, the racing will stay the same.
Well, in Holland, if you're an ice skater or a professional cyclist, you don't have to buy drinks. I remember walking down the street in Maastricht with a man by the name of Eric Heiden, and this was 20 years after his Olympic gold medals, and people were going, "Oh, look, Eric Heiden, who drank free all night."
Yeah. Speed skating is a great sport throughout the winter in Holland, and they've got equally as many world-class speed skaters with icon names as they have road racing cyclists. Here we are, Remouchon. Great hotel on the right, just there, stayed there as we now make the left turn, shortly to turn right again, and over the small stretch of cobblestones, round the corner and up the hill. There's a nice view from the motorway, actually, running down towards Liège.
Well, it's the only motorway in the world that gets turned into a parking lot for a bike race, because once we get that little bit closer to the slopes of the Côte de la Redoute, you will actually see a lot of cars parked at the side of the road, and basically the police just give up because so many people stop there, there's nothing they can do.
No, they tried for a few years, then they thought it's no good. If you can't beat them, we must join them, and so they closed the motorway just for the passage of the race because there's nowhere to go. This is the chase group then as it races through Remouchon. These are the 2 leaders. They're the ones that are going to change direction very shortly. Jens Voigt getting ready now for what he feels might be an assault on his hard work by Vinokourov. It's every man for himself on this climb. This is the sharp right. They used to run a criterium over these cobblestones, but as they now get towards the start of the climb, it'll be interesting, Bob, to see who makes the move from that back group.
Well, Vinokourov starting this climb from the front here of Jens Voigt. Jens Voigt has been very aggressive throughout this race. Vinokourov has done a great move to get across, and they've got about 48 seconds advantage over the chasers right now.
The 2 leaders then are on the approach to La Redoute. The gap is 48 seconds over about 30 riders. That seems to include all of the race favourites, with the exception perhaps of world champion Oscar Freire. It's been tough for Danilo De Luca to get up to that group, but he's done it now. And Jens Voigt and Alexander Vinokourov will see La Redoute first. And this is the chase group now, being led, as always, by Santiago Botero. Botero has 2, and I think I've caught sight of 3 very strong teammates there from Phonak. This is the setup now in the chase group. Last year's winner David Rebellin is there. Cadel Evans, a big threat as well. Looking further down, Michael Bogart, a big threat. He got up to this group with a lot of hard work, helped by Eric Decker. Kim Kirken, second in Flesh Roulon, is here. Ivan Basso, second in the Tour de France. He is here. Watch out for Pereiro. Botero, you can forget, he's working hard for the others. Paolo Bettini, for 3 years the World Cup winner. He is in the group. Sinkovic is on form. Echebia is on form. Jurgats needs to do something. De Luca, we know, is on form. Cunega reached them on his own. This is an incredible group now. Watch out for Alejandro Valverde. Pick a winner from that lot.
Well, I don't think you can. We're just coming up alongside the motorway here. Over to the right-hand side, a lot of cars will have been parked. This is the Côte de la Redoute, 2.3 kilometers. And unfortunately for the bike riders, it is at its steepest right at the very top, 19% gradient. I wonder if Jens Voigt has got it in his legs to stay with Alexander Vinokourov here, or if Vinokourov in the back of his mind is looking at the clock saying 36 kilometers to go. I need somebody to help me ride to the finish if we're going to survive. But that 42 seconds now is looking rather precarious.
Well, there's the crowd on the right, the motorway on the shoulder. All those cars are parked on it. There's the car park. It's normally a main route motorway or freeway. Turned into a car park. The police are well organised now. They're even allowing diagonal parking. And about 10 years ago, they were trying to give you a ticket for parking on it. 44 seconds the gap, and it's really going to be a crucial climb, this. But Turo has been superb today on the front. He's got 3 teammates. I don't know whether thought then Eric Decker was going to have a go, Bob. You did. You jumped out of your seat.
He was swinging off there to get out of the way, I think, of the riders coming up from behind. Pereiro and Perdiguero, the other 2 Phonak riders on the wheel of Santiago Botero there. Now, he's done such a great job of towing this peloton behind our 2 leaders, Vinokourov and Jens Voigt, that now it's up to his 2 teammates to do something special on this climb. Bettini hovering there in the gold helmet for the Quick-Step team. Jorg Jaksch's in there, and Ivan Basso looking very strong for the CSC squad.
Well, Ivan Basso riding into form. He wants to be a man who can challenge in the Giro d'Italia a little later in the season. In fact, only next month. There's Cadel Evans over to the left-hand side as well in the red jersey there for Team Davitamont Lotto. But the 2 leaders are now just 1 kilometer to go to the summit. Now, on a flat race, you would absolutely be certain that this would take itself around about 1 minute. But I tell you what, here it's going to take them about 2.5.
Well, watch out for Cadel Evans. I think this is the course that suits him absolutely. He's coming onto form. He left T-Mobile where he didn't really excel. They left him out of the Tour de France, which annoyed him. He's now gone across to the Lotto team. 8th in Paris-Nice, his best claim to fame this year. But this now is the time of the year we expect to see Cadel start to fire. Botero, simply superb. I don't think he's got much more left there now. He looks across at Pereiro and says, well, I think I'm done for. Other riders trying to come through. Meanwhile, further up the climb, and it's still Jens Voigt. What can you say about this man? We've run out of superlatives. He's just good.
Well, he's doing what he has to do here. He knows that Alexander Vinokourov is a very good climber, but Jens Voigt, I think, has decided, I'm going to set all the tempo now. Here's the aggression in the main group. Michael Bogart there, very comfortably in second position. Mirko Celestino is not too far away. Matthias Kessler there in the pink jersey. But this is a big acceleration from Martin Perdiguero.
Perdiguero leading on the climb now in pursuit of the 2 men up front, and the gap is 33 seconds. This is Perdiguero, Bob, and the Rabobank boys are trying to control him here in favour of Michael Bogart, but this is a free-for-all now. They're trying to open a little gap. Doesn't actually finish right on the top. It drags on a bit further.
After the very steep part is a false flat across the top. That is almost the toughest road in all of bike racing. Your legs crying out in pain, and you still have to close this incredible acceleration that always comes from our best racers. Kessler there, the rider from T-Mobile, he is up there in the front, but all kinds of damage being done. Bettini in trouble. Also, Perdiguero in trouble there. And it looks like Rebelline's having a little bit of a hard time as well. And the 2 CSC riders, teammates of Voigt, are nowhere in the picture yet. Kim Kirchen coming across. Ivan Basso really struggling now, just at the top. There's Cunego trying to get across. Cadel Evans as well. This is real bike racing. It is full on in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Danilo De Luca even being put into trouble now by the acceleration of Team Phonak.
De Luca had to repair the damage by missing the move earlier on. He might be paying for that price, you know, and also in trouble there was Jorg Jaksch. He was going backwards. Kim Kirken didn't like it. This is a free-for-all today. Every rider who made this breakaway group had to work hard on his own. There was no free ticket into this group, and they know it. Perdiguero is really riding well now. Up towards the summit here. It's still Jens Voigt who drives on, with Alexander Vinokourov just hooking up to one of the most famous express trains to come out of Germany.
He certainly is. This man is an unbelievable beast. A powerful bike rider, gets out of the saddle. His legs must be screaming out for agony. I'm not sure if this is the back end of the group and Santiago Botero, his job done for the day. Moving a little bit further forward this is certainly going to be the end of one or two riders' hopes here, the Côte de la Redoute. I'm impressed with Michael Bogert there, though, on the left-hand side, because he has matched every acceleration so far and is looking like a serious candidate, Bob.
Yes, he looks great right there, coming around the Phonak team riders. Kessler riding very strongly as well. T-Mobile absolutely desperate to get a result. They haven't won a race so far this year. Look at Rebellin. He's made the juncture there. He's just tacked onto the back, and it wouldn't surprise me if that was Jorg Jaks, the Liberty Seguros rider, right in the middle of the chasers of these two men, Voigt and Vinokourov.
Well, Michael Bogert, 2 times second. He's been 2 times fifth. He's had a third as well. He knows this course as well as anybody. This is now Alexander Vinokourov just working gently with Jens Voigt. Gently is probably the wrong word completely. They're both under extreme pressure now. Now, is that Bogart slipping down to check out the breakaway?
I wasn't sure if he was slipping back because he had a problem where he's going back to see just exactly who is in this group as he goes back to the rear ender. There is Alejandro Valverde, second from the end there. Now, he's riding a very sensible race, just sitting there, letting the race unfold in front of him and thinking about unleashing that very redoubtable sprint that he's got down towards the end.
Now, who has been left behind here? Because I've got a feeling we're still to come up on Danilo De Luca. He cracked under that pressure. Maybe not. Maybe he got in. Maybe he didn't, because there he is, Paul, and I think he might with Jorg Jaks.
Well, that's a big surprise. That's actually David Echevarria he's with, the two riders who were both very good just recently in the Flèche Wallonne. This is the pressure of being the top man, isn't it, Bob? He came in here with the Amstel Gold Race under his belt, the Flèche Wallonne, then all of a sudden he was given the title as #1 favourite. And unfortunately for him, I think that favourite title is just a little bit too heavy on his shoulders.
All the other riders looking to him to close the gap to the breakaway that Jens Voigt was involved in. So Danilo De Luca finding the pressure of being the leader of the Pro Tour and also the winner of the last 2 big races on the calendar, Flèche Wallonne and Amstel Gold Race, proving perhaps a little bit too much. De Luca trying now to get across to this group, being led by the Phonak duo of Perdiguero and Pereiro. Also, we saw Damiano Cunego in no man's land there, dangling off the back of this group as they chase down the 2 leaders. That looks like Rebellin perhaps now is making his move, and Jorg Jaks trying to get back on terms with Michael Bogart and Alejandro Valverde, and Pereiro is on the wheel. So now they're really racing very hard across these tough rolling roads on the top of the climb of La Redoute.
Well, they're very narrow roads here now, and even at this time of the year, hardly spring has sprung on the trees here. It's been rather a chilly spring, but you know, they're going to show a little bit of consternation now as well, because they didn't take much time off those 2 men. About 15 seconds is all they got back, and it's nudging up again. And they might now start to be wondering if this is the winning break.
Well, they're going to wonder very seriously, because Alexander Vinokourov was equally matched there on the slopes of that climb by Jens Voigt in second position. They have around about 37 seconds advantage, and very shortly they're going to take a right-hand turn onto the big main road which heads down towards the outskirts of Liège, and the next little climb of the day will be the Côte de Sprimont. Not too much for these riders to worry about, because it's nothing at all like the Côte de la Redoute, but it will be starting to set them up for the next big climb of the day, the climb of the Côte de Sartillemont.
33 kilometres covered in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. The 2 leaders are not only clear, but they're building their breakaway again. Jens Voigt, a powerhouse today throughout the race. They're leading here. Alexander Vinokourov, the gap is 38 seconds. We're heading towards the Côte de Sprimont. 32 kilometres only left to ride now. That is about 20 miles. And Danilo De Luca, we've caught glimpses of him. He has been left by the main chase in the pack behind.
Michael Bogert very active on the front here. This is Carsten Kroon. I think the word has been given to Rabobank that Michael Bogert is in fine form. Let's try and pull it all back together. There's a certain amount of panic, I feel, in the eyes of these riders, because they realize that men like Alexander Vinokourov and Jens Voigt cannot be given an almost 1-minute lead on the last 32 kilometers of racing. Team Phonak are riding very well today with their 2 men in here, Oscar Pereiro and of course Perdiguero, who's just sitting there in 4th position. 2 very dangerous riders, and of course you can see moving right up to the front, Cadel Evans is not too far away either.
Well, Cadel Evans going through now and looking for some more help as we get an attack here again. Pereiro having a dig this time, I think it is, as he starts to move clear. Well, Phonak have to thank Pereiro for getting him up here. And now Pereiro has gone, lost on La Redoute as we expected. His effort was full on for these 2 to put them in a winning position. Now they're going to have to try. Perdiguero tried on La Redoute, it didn't work. It reduced a few of the boys at the back, but this is still a very unhealthy big chase group here. Danilo De Luca, I don't think has got back on. He was dangling off the back with David Echevarria. Now, he may not be back yet, and if these pressure points keep coming, he won't get back either. Sprimont. Now, this is a main road climb, this. It just kicks up a little bit after a very fast descent. 52 seconds the gap. And a lot of riders now, by the fact they're freewheeling and just following wheels, I think have taken a few hits here, Bob.
Oh, yes, exhaustion into the legs. Also a little bit of hesitation in this chase group. Cunego's now got himself back on with Didier Roux there and Ivan Basso back into the group. Not a real organized chase, and so the gap continues to increase now. Voigt and Vinokourov up to 55 seconds advantage, and that's an incredible bit of riding being done by these two men, our leaders out on the course.
These are superb, and Voigt is exceptional. Jens Voigt now on the climb of the Côte de Sprimont. Start at 9%, 1.5 meters, 1.5 kilometers rather, as they make the move here now. And Voigt and Alexander Vinokourov have nudged out almost at 20 seconds since they came over the top of the Côte de la Redoute. We were talking about these really as the men to be chased down. We should be talking about them as the men to win this race.
Well, you know what, at the top of the Côte de la Redoute, it came down to around about 23 seconds, but that, I think, is the incredible strong character of Jens Voigt. He wouldn't give up. When he saw the time gap starting to come down, he wasn't worried at all. He knew that once he got over the summit of the climb, he could get that big engine going once again, and they've started to nudge it up to almost the 1 minute margin. I would think the men in this group here, we're looking at the group number 2 on the road, the group that contains the majority of the challengers, must be seriously worried about those two men in the lead.
There are 19 men left in the chase group. There were 30 together at the start of the climb of La Redoute. So now only the strong will out, and not here is Danilo De Luca, and not looking too hot on the back there is David Rebellin.
Well, David Rebellin is going to have to ride a very clever tactical race here because he's completely isolated. I haven't seen Fabian Wegman. It might be Fabian Wegman just a little bit further up there, but he doesn't have too many teammates on hand to look after him, so he's going to have to sit at the back. He will know the points of the race where he can take the risk of sitting in last position, but certainly he has to bank, I think, everything now on the final 2 climbs of the day if he wants to win, because he actually doesn't have the team to chase.
Bettini now putting his teammates on the front. Didier Roux there for Laurent Brochard is chasing, and they know that they have a very dangerous situation as the gap continues to increase. Danilo De Luca trying to fight his way back. 1 minute, 1 second now to Voigt and Vinokourov, and this is an incredible bike race. De Luca doing a great ride to claw his way back into the front group along with David Echevarria. Now they're tacked on the back. De Luca, however, if he was on good form, would never have missed out on that split that happened on La Redoute. He's not looking great at the back of the group, just praying to get to the finish line at this point. And now it looks like he's just trying to come through. It looks like he's giving up the ghost a little bit. He got back on, and now immediately he's being dropped again because the chase of these two men is so difficult right now. Vinokourov looking fabulous. Sitting on, Jens Voigt seems to be doing a lot of work.
He's been hit, Paul, by all of the pressure being race favoured. He can't control everybody, and this race has been a terrifically aggressive race today. And once they started really riding out at Stocker, Danilo De Luca was forced on the defensive. He's countered a lot of moves, but he's not superhuman, and I think he's going to probably slip off the back now. This is the group, so carry on.
I have to say, I think this has got to be one of the most aggressive finales that I can remember in Liège-Bastogne-Liège over the last couple of years, because the attacks have been going since we got to the Côte d'Ouane. Here is Paolo Bettini. He too is looking to try and find the gap. Team Rabobank have missed out here, and they can see that time gap nudging up to 1 minute and 10 seconds. That really is an incredible performance by Voigt and Alexander Vinokourov.
It is incredible. They've eased a little bit because of the pressure, but now they've got to seriously start wondering if they can do anything about this breakaway. There's a number of guys here on T-Mobile not going to chase. It's going to be a very difficult race this now to pick a winner. Looking down there, Bob, 1 minute and 7 seconds, still going out.
Peter Weening there on the Rabobank squad. Michael Boogert putting his riders on the front of the bike race. And here comes an attack. It looks like Cadel Evans, perhaps, from the De Vitamon Lotto squad, putting in a solid move here. That was a big acceleration from Weening. The gap coming down a tiny bit, just a couple of seconds. Paolo Bettini closing the gap. Ivan Basso and Jörg Jaksch trying to follow through there. And Alejandro Valverde has been very close, very attentive to the front. Valverde on good form and having a great day.
I'm just trying to work out that ride. It doesn't look like the style of Cadel Evans, although it looks like his team. But anyway, they've nailed him back, and he's obviously a rider which they don't want him to go anywhere. as they come back into a little group. But this is showing signs of a little bit of disorganisation now. The strongmen have played cards on La Redoute and it didn't work out for them. Now they're not too sure how to handle this race situation. No, it wasn't Cadel Evans, he's shaking. It was Christophe Brandt. Welcome back, Christophe. He was accused of wrongly taking dope last year and kicked off the team. Then he was found to be innocent, and he's welcomed back on. It's the first time we've seen him since.
First time we've seen him since. He's a very good bike rider in races like this, but these two leaders are turning out to be very strong men indeed. They're setting themselves up now on the little section between the Côte de Sprimont and the Côte de Sartillemont as serious candidates for the overall win, because looking at this group behind, there is actually no organised chase. There's flurries of attacks off the front, but if you want to pull back two strong engines like those two men at the front, you actually need to have an organised team chasing.
Well, this again is Peter Wenning here, who's having a go. He's been a strong man. He came up in an original group of 7 way back on Stocko, and now he's still working hard when the stars have joined alongside him. Team cars being dispatched to the front group of 2. That's a good sign, and it's gone out to 1:12. Remember, they nailed it back to about 35 seconds on La Redoute, but they gambled on catching them there. They failed. Now they don't really know how to organise the chase. Rabobank, you see, having to do all of the work. We are now looking at the two leaders here at 1:13. The gap incredibly still going up here as they're running into the last 27 kilometres of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. And the peloton behind are ragged. And I'm not so sure now that this might not work. And if it works, well, surely Jens Voigt should win, because he's been superb.
He deserves the win. He's a powerful man, but I wonder if the Côte de Saint-Nicolas down towards the end might just be that little bit too steep for Jens Voigt. Jens is not one of the great climbers. He's a very powerful man. He's the strongest rider, certainly on the flatter sections of the course. But Alexander Vinokourov is renowned for his uphill ability. Let's not forget, when he was winning Paris-Nice a couple of years ago, he stamped his authority all over the summit finish at the slopes of the Montferrand, something that Jens Voigt has never really enjoyed.
Well, looking down at the peloton, we had 30 at the start of the climb. There's 28 still in the group, so we've only lost 2 after La Redoute, when at one stage we'd lost 10. They've gotten themselves back into the race, and that's an indication to me that the chase has gone out of this race at the moment in this group. And if that sort of news gets into the ears of Voigt and Vinokourov, they're going to feel pretty confident. There's still climbs to come, and this race, in fact, climbs all of the way to the finishing line. It's going to be a tough call for those two at the front, and it's Rabobank, who were more or less passengers early on, Bob, till they got the right combination. Ironically, they're now having to do all of the work.
Oh, absolutely. Kroon and Wiening now trying to tow this group back up to Vinokourov and Jens Voigt. It doesn't look like they're going as quickly as they should go. Kim Kirken there on the left-hand side of your screen, and the champion of Luxembourg jersey. He's a Fossa Bortolo rider. And just at the back is Damiano Cunego along with Alejandro Valverde from the Illes Baleares squad. So here's our two leaders. A little bit surprised to see Jens Voigt still pouring on the coals when the gap continues to increase. I don't think that he has a great chance against Vinokourov, not only on a climb, but also on a sprint. Vinokourov very, very fast, 25 kilometers to go to the finish. And I don't know if CSC is going to be playing the right tact if they continue to put the pressure on this breakaway. Basso and the other teammate from CSC are in the group, but there's not much of a chase going on between their two leaders right now.
I was wondering, in fact, that real shot, whether it was Botero who came back in. And he was dropped, of course, on the climb of La Redoute, because they went to a free wheel situation. You takes your chance. Now we zoom down here, round the bends on very good road surfaces for the moment at least. It stays pretty good all the way in now. The rain, which has threatened occasionally a few spots, has gone away again. Perfect racing conditions, and if you're feeling good, this is your race. Danilo De Luca, he's not feeling good right now. He's felt all of the pressure of winning the 2 big races in the last few days, and I don't think he's going to see the front at the end on this one.
Bob, I tell you one thing, if you just keep an eye on Alexander Vinokourov, he's doing much shorter turns than Jens Voigt at the front. Voigt is doing a lot of work to make sure of the success of this breakaway. They're dropping now down away from the small plateau around Liège into the little town of Sartillemont. That will come up in around about 3 kilometers time, and once they go through the town of Sartillemont, they go up that very difficult climb where a couple of years ago Paolo Bettini jumped away when he was trying to get himself a victory in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. This year, I think we may well see these two riders stay together, and the sort out is going to be on the slopes of Saint Nicolas, because that is an unbelievable beast of a climb with just 6 kilometers left to go.
Still some tough climbing left in the bike race. Not a real well-organized chase. You can see the gap continuing to increase. 28 riders, maybe 30 now. There's been a gradual regrouping after La Redoute, which is a very tough climb. These riders, of course, got away a few kilometers before that. Voigt, unbelievably strong in this bike race today. He's sort of built his form throughout the spring, and he's putting in an incredible ride today. Alexander Vinokourov hoping to restore the reputation of T-Mobile, and this would be a great way to do that, winning Liege-Bastogne-Liège. T-Mobile not having a win so far this season.
22 kilometers to go, and the gap is going up. 1 minute 21. And there they are, following each other, looking great, as Alexander Vinokourov keeps the pressure on nicely here. Third last year, knows what it's like to finish well in this race, but now he could go even better. It's the highest place finish by his country, Kazakhstan, in this race. We've sort of known him, Paul, haven't we, since he was a very good amateur, had a great group of riders around him. We've watched his progress with interest, but he's become one of the best bike riders in the world, and now he's in a breakaway that could decide this race.
Well, it would have been very interesting last year if he'd actually come to the Tour de France. He was a man who was thought to be a challenger to Lance Armstrong's supremacy in the 2004 Tour de France, but at the end of the day, he took a nasty dive in the Tour of Switzerland. And look at this acceleration. This is Sartillemont, the little town where the climb starts. Jens Voigt just accelerating out of that corner there and immediately putting 4 or 5 bicycle lengths between himself and Alexander Vinokourov. But I think Vinokourov, if he comes to the Tour de France in form this year, might find himself with the possibility of being team leader, because I'm always wondering about the ability of Jan Ullrich to come back to the power that he had a couple of seasons ago.
Well, Jens Voigt is a good climber, don't forget that. He wore the King of the Mountains jersey for a single day in the Tour de France. He won it going up, and he promptly crashed coming down on the very next day, and so he knows the ups and downs of big-time bike racing. But today he's been absolutely superb. Made an awful lot of friends, I'm sure, around the course and on television today. Big decision time, though, because I can't believe they went away thinking they were going to win this race. But at 20 kilometers to go, 1 minute 24, it's looking good.
It's unbelievable. The gap continues to increase. Mario Kummer there driving the T-Mobile car. He's the team manager for this race, and it would be an incredible achievement for Vinokourov to win Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Jens Voigt might have overheard our commentary and denigrating his sprinting prowess and tried to get away from Vinokourov. Of course, he was having none of that. Straight back onto the wheel, and 20 kilometers to go, 1 minute and 24 seconds. If this were a stage of the Tour de France, for example, and the whole field was chasing, we'd say no chance for 2 men to stay away. But in a classic with a lot of tired men after more than 250 Ks, the chase not quite as dramatic. Patrick Sinkovitz from the Quick-Step team, he's got 2 riders helping him from Rabobank, Carsten Kroon as well as Peter Wiening, but the gap continuing to go up, stable now, about 1 minute and 21 seconds behind our 2 leaders, Voigt and Vinokourov.
Well, if any of the guys in this group right now want to think they've got a chance of winning Liège-Bastogne-Liège, they're going to have to bury themselves on the slopes of the next climb, the Côte de Sartillemont, because they really need to reduce that gap from the 1.25 minutes that it's standing at to around about the 30-second margin. Otherwise, they're not going to see those 2 riders again. There is a formation of organisation on the front end of this group now, I think, as riders are starting to realise that those 2 guys off the front have got a very good chance of surviving.
Well, I'm not so sure they can do anything about this. It's at 1 minute 18. They've nibbled off a couple of seconds by good chasing here at the front. But there's only 1 or 2 riders willing to do this pacemaking, and that is bad. Because the group is so big, that's actually an advantage to the 2 leaders, because there's a lot of passioners in this group. Begins to demoralise the pacemakers as we get towards the big climbs. There will be 1 or 2 desperate efforts coming from this pack, and they've got to come on the climbs, and they've got the best chance of shaking off the other strong men. Danilo De Luca has realised today he may have bitten off more than he can chew. He's now sat near the back of the leading group, but of course you never know, he might get to the front. There's a view there from the slopes here of the Belgian Ardennes at 19 kilometres to go, 1 minute and 16 seconds the gap. They've chiselled off just 4 seconds of the lead here. Jens Voigt, whenever our camera cuts back, seems to be the workhorse. Alexander Vinokourov doesn't seem to be in trouble. This is, remember, a German has never won this race since 1979. That was Didi Thurau. A rider from Kazakhstan has never won this race.
Well, there you go. This man from Kazakhstan in the pink jersey of T-Mobile, I think, is the man who's turning out to be the biggest chance of the victory here, because I still think that the man on the front, Jens Voigt, will have a very difficult time staying with him on the slopes of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, which is the final climb of the day. You can see these guys now really are starting to hear the panic bells ringing in the main field, because they know that those two riders are not slowing down at all. This is Wiening on the front, Carsten Kroon in third position doing a lot of work, Peter Sinkiewicz in there as well, thinking about the possibility of Paolo Bettini, although I'm not quite sure whether or not Paolo Bettini has got that acceleration to get out of this group on the slopes of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. And the two big pre-race favourites, David Rebellin and Danilo De Luca, as we look at the back here, Danilo De Luca I don't think is enjoying the pressure of being ranked #1 in the Pro Tour.
Not right now. Sitting behind him, David Echeverria, and sitting behind him is Pereiro. All leaders of the team, all carrying the ones on their numbers, and all sitting at the back of the long line of riders now. This has been an amazing race. It's been a very, very good race, but it may have a very surprising finale. Here we go, onto the climb of the Côte de Saint-Tilmont. 9% at its steepest point, 3.7 kilometres, almost 2.5 miles in length, a long drag. Getting close to the last chance for the boys to close down. Note the time gap was starting with a gap of 67 seconds. They got as close as 33-34 on the Côte de la Redoute, and after that they pulled away again. Jens Voigt has never won a classic race. He's won some great races. He's won 43 great races, but never a race remotely approaching the size of the Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
He certainly hasn't. He won the Grand Prix des Nations a few years ago. He's a man who's been very successful so far this season, with an overall victory in the Tour of the Mediterranean, 4th overall in Paris-Nice. And just recently he won the time trial, the morning stage of the final day of the Tour of the Pays Basque. That is the River Haute, and this is the chasing group now with all of the big names in. Now it's a chance for Alexander Vinokourov to come to the front. He's the man better suited to the slopes, and I think Jens Voigt had better throw out the sandbags, Bob, and hold on.
He's got to hold on now if he's going to have a chance to get to the finish line. A bit of a strange tactic being played by Team CSC. I don't think that I would want any of my riders helping Alexander Vinokourov get anywhere near the finish line. He was 3rd in this race last year, and now we see Sinkiewicz still on the front with Kroon and Wiening trying to close that gap down. They're down to 1 minute and 2 seconds. CSC, if they're going to have a chance, they need Jens Voigt, I think, to come back to the group and start contributing to the chase, not trying to contribute to Vinokourov's chances at the front.
We'll see. Quick Step taking a back seat with the absence of Tom Bonen. He's on his holidays now after his brilliant week in a different part of Belgium, down in Flanders, with the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. Sinkiewicz is on form. He's had 2 good results in his last 2 outings.
It's like Jorg Jats moving up there into 3rd place as well. This is a great move by this young rider, a rider who's discovered himself over the last couple of days. This is Carsten Kroon. He too, I think, trying to do what he can. There's Jorg Jats coming up to the front as well. Looks like Vicioso as well. He's a man that we haven't talked very much about, but he's a man who could cause the big surprise here a little bit later on if there is a sprint for the victory. Although, look at the time gap now. It is starting to come down, but look at the face of Jorg Jats. I think that just tells it all about what this race has been like this afternoon. There's Cadel Evans. Jats
looks quite good at the moment, actually. And it pulled off another second there. So with 10 seconds they've brought back after about 3/4 of a kilometre up the slopes. And it's all been down to the work, really, of Carsten Kroon, who's now working at the front, and Sinkiewicz gone back into 2nd place. Liberty Seguras have got a few men up here, but I think the only one firing now is Jorg Jats. As we pull back a little bit, we've got Valverde down there as well. More CSC boys, including Ivan Basso, just now hoping that those two stay away, although they won't feel too confident of Jens Voigt beating Vinokourov. The only advantage is it is uphill to the finish. It's not a pure sprint finish.
Coming into the outskirts of Liège here, this is the slopes of the Côte de Saint-Tilmont. These are 2 hairpin bends halfway up the climb. They will swing around to the left in a moment, and then the road will tilt up towards the final summit of the plateaus around Liège before charging down into the area of Saint-Nicolas. And this is Carsten Kroon. He's not enjoying himself at the front end of this group.
This guy's a good bike rider. He's never had anything like the victories that he's probably deserved, because he is a workhorse for Rabobank. But every year they've no hesitation in renewing his contract. He's a great value to the team, and this is why He doesn't win for himself, he tries to win for the team, and it looks like him and the German Sienkiewicz are now being the workhorses of this breakaway, and the others are saying thanks a lot because Jörg Jatzk is doing nothing there just now. Remember, they've got to make a move soon. At 16 kilometres to go, just 10 miles from the finish, that's a big group. And I said it before, I'll say it again, that because it's such a big group is in the favour of the two leaders.
But the time gap is not in the favour of the two leaders because it's come off about 15 seconds in the first kilometre of this climb. And Jens Voigt again has come to the front to whip up the pacemaking. That was the last hairpin bend. They've got about 1.5 kilometres to the top of this climb, and then there's a right-hand turn and a very fast descent into the little Italian quarter of Liège, the area of Saint-Nicolas. And if they've only got 30 seconds, Bob, I would say at the bottom of that climb, then the winner's going to come from the group behind.
They're going to need a little bit more than 30 seconds, but that's just about the gap that we will look for coming into the streets of Liège before the long climb up to the finish. Of course, if it was flat like it was in the old days, these riders would be in for a great chance to win this bike race. It looks like Brandt there, probably in a little bit of trouble. Very choppy pedaling style at the moment, and that's an indication that you're suffering on the climbs. He's doing a great job to be in the front so far, but it'll be up to Cadel Evans, his teammate, to try to close down on the race win. Sienkiewicz still at the lead, still trying to close down on Voigt and Vinokourov. 46 seconds is the gap. He's hoping that his teammate Paolo Bettini can do what he's done a couple of times before, win Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Well, Bettini still sat there, 4 men down. You can easily pick him out wearing the gold-coloured crash helmet, which no doubt relates to his gold medal in the Athens Olympic Games last year. And he's not overdone things. He's just watched and tried to master every move. He had a little bit of a problem out on the course, but he got back pretty quickly. And I think he is a big danger right now. But they've got to reduce that gap, and it's 17 seconds is all they've pulled back since this climb started. If they get over the top with 40 in hand, I think they'll go away again.
Well, they may well do that because it's a very fast descent into the outskirts of Liège. Speeds approaching 110 kilometres an hour. 70 miles an hour will be the speed that they will attain going down. There at the back in that white jersey is the leader of the Pro Tour, Danilo De Luca, the winner just 3 days ago of Flèche Wallonne. And of course, just before that, the Amstel Gold Race. Sienkiewicz here on the front for Quick Step, doing an incredible job. He's obviously got the nod, Bob, from Paolo Bettini, who was trying to hope that he can use the slopes of the Sartillemont as his gap, but the gap in fact is starting to creep up again.
14 seconds now is all they've lost to make it 13, and this is not good. There's Bettini off to the right of our picture as he now just rides in the line, does nothing. He'll thank his teammate. It looks as though Carsten Kroon can't make up my mind whether he's laughing or crying, but he's certainly going to the back right now. And there's an attack by Jatzk. That looks like him. So there's the move. It had to come. Now who's going to go with him, Bob?
I think that Bettini's going to have to go with him now. His teammate Sienkiewicz doing all of the tempo on the climb up until now, but this is an incredible attack being put in by Jörg Jatzk. He's feeling the danger right now. There is Bettini closing the gap as we thought he would. We'll see if Bugert can come through and Rebellin. Now it's full panic on the streets of Belgium. It is Jörg Jatzk trying to chase down Vinokourov and Jens Voigt, our other leader. Bettini having a bit of a hard time, it seems like, as we come into 14.5 kilometers to go for the leaders, 15 Ks to go for the group. Jörg Jatzk somewhere in between the two.
I'll tell you what, it's proved one thing, that peloton is absolutely tired because there was very few reactions. Only Bettini has tried to put it to rights, and it's very, very hard. There's an awful lot of tired men there. The gap is opening now. Jatzk has been mastered. He's back in the group, and he hasn't really impressed on the leaders.
Well, that's Michael Bogert made the last part of the effort. This is the right-hand turn at the top of the climb of the Côte de Sartillemont. Now they will face up to a small moment of respite, Bob, as they drop down into the outskirts of Liège, and I think they'll be just about ready for this. It looks as if it's going to be a showdown here between those two leaders. Look how the gap has split there, and again, it looks as if Etchebarria is going.
Well, we thought he was done for the day, and now he's having a go himself. He's taking over from his teammate, Jörg Jatzk. It's a one-on-one plan. I can't think where he found the legs from because he was really struggling up the Côte de la Redoute, but he's having a little dig. Sienkiewicz and now Bettini trying to close the gap as well.
Bettini comes straight
Kessler
across there.
chasing him down, I think.
Kessler, the dark horse, the man that many people said before the start of this race was one to look out to. But Paolo Bettini is certainly not going to give up too quickly.
So Paolo Bettini tried to put matters to rights, but the two leaders in front simply refused to lay down. And look at that, Bettini has now moved over to the right saying, come and give us a hand, guys. Well, that's a bit rich. He's been sitting on himself for the last 2 hours, Bob.
Celestino now having a dig with Michael Bugert, but each time we have an acceleration, there's a little bit of a regrouping, and the gap goes back up. It comes down for a few seconds, then the gap goes back up. So Vino Kurov and Jens Voigt, doing a great job. Perdiguero now coming up to the front here, and everyone looking at each other, and CSC has not pulled through.
There's nobody left to make the pace. They are all absolutely at their limits. We're looking back at the group here now. They don't know which way to look, because I'm not convinced anybody's got the strength left right now. Cadell Evans having a little dig. The gap is hovering at 46 seconds. So on that long climb, they actually lost 20 seconds of their lead, and they're now still clear. The same two leaders. That looks like Yatsk again got through on the inside. Another last desperate moment to try and reach the leaders. This is a terrific race, and we're getting to the point now with 13 kilometers to go that we'd like to think that the Kazakhstan-German tandem up front does win the day.
Well, they're trying, they're doing everything they can, but these guys have certainly not given up at all. Jorg Yatsch is going for it. There's been so many attacks today, Bob. I can hardly remember how many attacks there have been. There's Angel Vicioso just on the right in the dark blue jersey there of Liberty Seguros. These are the two leaders. A time for them to recuperate a fraction. You can just see down in the bottom the big bridge over the River Meuse. Jens Voigt and Alexander Vinokourov. I don't know how they've managed to keep onto this advantage. It was down to just inside of 30 seconds at the Côte de la Redoute with 35 kilometers to go. Here we are at 12 kilometers to go, and they've stretched it out, and they're still holding on to 52 seconds lead.
Well, there's no cooperation whatsoever. There's been attacks and regrouping in the front. There's David Echevarria, who put in one on the last climb. Ivan Basso looked to be in a bit of trouble there. Damiano Cunego looking to the front. He hasn't been able to put in an attack yet, and there's absolutely no cooperation, so the gap goes up, and now it's starting to creep up again. When the attack comes, it goes down a little bit, but no real concerted and organized effort from this group. And these are all our big favorites, and they don't usually cooperate with each other.
Kim Kirken is here as well. He's number 31. There's the winner last year. And they are all just looking, watching and waiting. And the simple answer is they are all at the limit of their ability right now, and they don't really know how they're going to pull this group back. Sorry about a little bit of picture breakup. It's due to the live uplinks for the helicopter when you go into these gantries over the road. The gap is up to 53 seconds again. Now it's a nice stretch of road. They're steadily descending down into Liège itself, running across the city, and then these days we go right out the other side, and unfortunately it then goes uphill, the final climb of the day. And I think they're going to make it.
I think they are going to make it. It's up to 55 seconds again. The reason they're going to make it, I think, is because there is no concerted effort in this group behind. Nobody wants to organize a chase. It's basically now down to a bunch of individuals, and each individual in the back of his mind is thinking, I don't want to do too much because I'm giving the advantage to someone else. Where these two men, they have dedicated themselves to staying off the front. I don't think either of these two men here is holding anything back at all. It's going to be a big showdown in around about 5 kilometers time, because that's when they're going to hit the Côte de Saint-Nicolas.
I actually don't think Jens Voigt ever holds anything back from the minute he attacks in kilometer 1 to the end of the race. He is always giving 100% effort, and he's still content to drive this on. And we're nudging 1 minute again now. They came close, as they did on La Redoute, but now it's going out to that magical minute. If they go into the last 4 kilometers with a minute, then they'll win.
Bettini
even
looking back.
Uphill.
Yes, absolutely. Bettini a little bit disgusted there looking back. Doesn't see a lot of riders in the front coming through. Michael Bugart, he's coming through there. But you can see the group, they're all bunched up, and our two leaders are not waiting around for anything. They're working so well together, and they are perhaps the two strongest men in this bike race today.
You can see by the fact the referee's got 2 cars behind that group that the main field is split in 2. And they're keeping it that way to not allow anybody into the gap. It's crucial now they police this race well, because this race is living on a hairthread here as the riders race towards Liège. There's the famous Standard Liège Football Club, and a pretty good football team here in Belgium, as they now race around that stadium, over the River Meuse, and up they go towards the finish. Take a look at some of these faces here. I've got a feeling there's 1 or 2 rather depressed bike riders in this group now.
A lot of these men in this group thought they had a very good chance of winning Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and when they get a chance to know that the time gap now has gone over the 1 minute margin, they're starting to feel that maybe they've left it just a little bit too late. There's no one team quite strong enough to organize the chase at the front end of the group. This is Kashekin on the back, the Kazakhstan rider from Crédit Agricole. They're bunching right across the road here. Now's the time, Bob, psychologically, where I think they'll want to try and relax a fraction, because they all know what's coming up next. And this climb, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, really strikes fear into the heart of most bike riders left.
Coming as it does at the end of many, many kilometers, almost 300-kilometer bike race. It's over 100 years old since the start of this in the 1890s. It's an incredible honor to win a race like this. I'm sure that's in the back of Jens Voigt and Alexander Vinokurov's mind. What needs to happen now from our select group of the real leaders and pre-race favorites of this event is that they're going to have to send their teammates to the front and make a flat-out effort to close the gap down now. Only 8 kilometers to the finish line. The gap continues to hover at right about 1 minute. There is a climb towards the finish. If it was flat all the way, no way would they close that gap, but there is a little bit of a climb. However, there is a chase from behind. It's going to be very tough to catch our 2 leaders.
Well, it's not very far. In fact, it's around about 500 or 600 meters to the right-hand turn. They turn left here. You can see the Italian flags are very abundant in this little suburb of Liège, because this is where the majority of the expatriate workers came just after the Second World War and started working in the iron mills and, of course, in the coal mines not too far away from here. There's the Italian flag. Well, it may not be an Italian day here this afternoon, because these 2 riders, Bob, are going to start the Côte de Saint-Nicolas with a 1-minute advantage over the main field.
They now have 1 second more than they had when they started the climb of the Côte de Saint-Tillemont. That should do it. 69 seconds as I speak. 7 kilometres to go to the finish. On Paul Sherwin's reckoning, you pull back a minute every 10. They can't lose now as they're heading up towards that final climb. 6.9 kilometres. Probably 5 of it is all uphill. It is not an easy climb. It is probably going to split the 2 leaders as well. But what will it do to the chase group? There'll be one last desperate effort by somebody to try and leap across the gap. It's going to be a dire climb up to the finish in Anse today.
It certainly is. It's going to be very difficult. Looking at the pedaling action here of Alexander Vinokurov, he appears to be the freshest of these 2 riders. Now, Jens Voigt, I don't think he has to panic at all too much here, Bob, because even if he does get dropped slightly by Alexander Vinokurov, once we get to the flatter part of the course, he can then actually use his power to come back 12% at the bottom of this climb.
The 2 leaders now arrive at the bottom of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. This is the last climb of the day. The finishing line awaits them on the top. The gap has gone up to 1 minute and 10 seconds. What a marvellous breakaway this has been. The pack behind individually might feel strong. As a group, they are beaten and they don't know how to break the grip of one another. And it looks as though Phonak, Pereiro and Perdiguero are trying to take the race in their hands at the front.
Little bit of nervousness in this group. There's Kim Kirken, just second, a couple of days away in the Flèche Wallonne. The Phonak there on the front, getting themselves organised. Ivan Basso, number 41, in a defensive role now, where a few moments ago I thought he may well be the secret weapon for Team CSC here this afternoon. But these 2 riders are on the slopes of this wicked climb that the organisation found around about 15 years ago. It really is a nasty brute to throw in after 255 kilometres in the saddle.
255 Ks before you get to the last 6 kilometers of the bike race. Vinokurov looking at it over his shoulder at Jens Voigt to see where he is. Jens Voigt hasn't shirked any of his responsibility. Team Phonak now realizing how dangerous this situation is. It's Perdiguero leading for Pereiro. They're perhaps team leader for the rest of this bike race, but I think they've let it go out a little bit too long. Damiano Cunego as well as Kim Kirken tacked onto the back there. Look at our 2 leaders struggling on the steep part, 12% gradient of this climb. It's going to be a dogfight all the way to the finish.
This is where Tyler Hamilton laid the foundation of his victory in this race back in 2003. Sadly, Tyler no longer in the sport and fighting that drug allegation. But these 2 riders now are shoulder to shoulder. It's a shame that one has to win, one has to lose, and it's going to be the attack by Vinokurov. But I'm sorry we cut away from it. I'm back with it now. I was about to say that Jens Voigt was up to that one.
Well, Jens Voigt is straight up to that one. They haven't quite got to the steepest part of the climb, but the fact that Jens Voigt has responded to that attack by Alexander Vinokurov bodes well for a finish for the German here, Bob.
I can't believe he can continue to respond to these attacks by Vinokurov. That's an incredible effort. Look at the face of Jens Voigt. He's a man that never gives up. He knows what he needs to do. do. It seems as if CSC has given him a chance to go ahead and try to win this bike race. They have a 1-and-6-second lead now. The race behind is exploding all over the climb of the Saint-Nicolas, and look at our two leaders. Vinokourov put in a big attack there, but Jens Voigt straight back onto his wheel.
Last desperate effort. They've lost only 2 seconds of the lead. I wasn't sure where that shot of Cadel Evans was. Either was he going up or was he going back? We'll find out in a second, because that's Bettini leading the main pack here at the moment.
That's Bettini on the front, but they're over a minute behind there, right up there as well. You can see that is actually Per de Guerro in second place, Michael Bogert in third, Cadel Evans halfway across the gap. A very nice move by this man. He's actually riding into form as well. Former wearer of the pink jersey at the Giro d'Italia, and a former very good mountain biker, Bob, so he won't be too worried about the steepness of this climb.
Oh, he's done some big climbs in his career. This is a great ride, though, being put in by Cadel Evans. Has had some very tough luck with broken collarbones in the recent past.
He's only had 7 broken collarbones, Bob.
Only 7. He's put all that behind him, though, and he's streaking across to our two leaders. Jens Voigt still making the tempo in front of Alexander Vinokourov with just over 5 Ks to the finish.
I'm not sure Jens Voigt there's not hurting Vinokourov now. 55 seconds the gap, 5.3 kilometers to go. Is the fairy tale about to explode in the faces of the two riders up front? Cadel Evans here is giving this 110%. It is all for him or nothing right now. He's never won a classic either.
Look at the way he's suffering. Look at the face on him. He's trying to really blow this race apart. He knows he's going to have to do something very special if he's going to ride across the gap to the two leaders, Alexander Vinokourov and Jens Voigt. 5 kilometers to go. They are over the summit. And I have to say now, it looks like it's going to tip towards the scales of Jens Voigt. Oh, a little bit precarious around this corner, but still, Jens Voigt, I thought, Bob, would have gone under pressure there on Saint-Nicolas, but it went the other way.
Unbelievable. Jens Voigt has been so very strong. Starting to get some gaps now open up in the front group. There's Celestino just on the back, along with Echevarria, as well as the teammate of Vinokourov. There's Bettini. He's making a move himself now, trying to close the gap to Cadel Evans, who sits in third position out on the road. And you can see him just in the front of your screen there. Bettini making a big move now, getting across.
47 seconds and closing. Cadel Evans. No Australians ever won this race. Phil Anderson second back in 1984. And Bettini closing rapidly. But these two boys, what they can't afford to do is to start negotiating who takes the lead and slow down, because then it's curtains.
Well, let's not forget, although the Côte de Saint-Nicolas is the last scheduled climb on the race here, there is a very long slide up to the mountain top finish in Anse. Again, precarious as they pick their way through this little town of Anse, which is just around about 5 kilometers from the heart of Liège. And Bettini has made the junction with Cadel Evans, or has he? Look at that, he's having a hard time, and Michael Bogert's come across too.
Well, one thing we're seeing is these top professionals aren't racing for second or third place. They only want the win or nothing. And that's why Bettini's giving his all, as well as Evans now. It is all or nothing for these bike riders, and I don't think they've got much more diesel left in those legs. 42 seconds, they're still closing, and they're closing on Cadel as well.
Cadel Evans has certainly not looked back and not asked for any help at all. Bettini and Bogert are swapping turns here to try and pull that man back into the fold. And once they do, they need to continue working as a unit if they're going to try and axe into that gap that has come down to 40 seconds. I really can't believe that the two men at the front are going to get caught on the final climb of the day. But as you say, Phil, they dare not start to play tactical maneuvers, because if they do, they'll lose 30 seconds just like that.
3.4 kilometers, that's a little blink of an eyelid over 2 miles to the finish, as that 40 seconds is the spread between first, second, third, fourth and fifth. These two are desperate as well, but we never expected to see them at this stage of the race in the lead. And they're being pursued now by 3 of the top classic riders. Cadel Evans has always promised us a great result, and today he's racing for it.
Well, he is, because those two guys who've got serious reputations, Paolo Bettini and Michael Bogert, they haven't actually got onto the slipstream yet, Bob, of Cadel Evans, who's flying along, not looking for anyone to help him.
Cadel Evans closing the gap now to about 39 seconds. It's Bettini and Bogert that are trying to get on Cadel Evans' wheel, and they were looking to each other to do the brunt of the pacemaking there. So not a lot of cooperation, but I don't think it's because Bettini doesn't want to do it. I don't think he's quite able and capable of closing the gap now, at least not by himself, to the wheel of Cadel Evans. I don't think he's being cagey at all. I don't think he has the legs today, and the gap now starting to creep back up again to 42 seconds.
What a superb Liège-Bastogne-Liège. 91 events at Liège-Bastogne-Liège since it first started back in the late 1800s. This is going to be a classic one. We'd love both of these riders to win, but they'll have to fight out first place today. Jens Voigt and Alexander Vinokourov got together some 54 kilometers from the finish. We thought it was the beginning of the final move, not the final move. It's 44 seconds the spread. They can't bridge that in 2 kilometers.
They shouldn't be able to. Let's not forget the 2 kilometers that we're talking about are uphill. Both of these men, they're riding very well. It's good to see, Bob, that nobody's being tactical at all. They're both doing their share of work at the front. They want to make sure they survive. A few moments ago, I would have said at the bottom of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, I would offer the chances of victory to Alexander Vinokourov, but now I'm changing camps, as I'm allowed to do, but you're not. I've got a feeling now that this man on the inside, Jens Voigt, he's got to be almost unbeatable in a sprint today.
I would. All right, I'll take those odds. 1.5 Ks to go. Here's the chase group now. Cadel Evans still making his turns. Bogert, Bettini sitting on for the moment. Cadel Evans looking back at Bettini. I don't think Bettini's being cagey here at all. I just don't think he has the legs. We'll see who's the fastest man up in the front. We haven't gotten a gap for a little bit of a while, so we'll see if they're closing it down there. It was 44 seconds, the last chance we had to take a look at that. Voigt looking very strong, but Vinokourov, he's a very fast man. Let's not forget T-Mobile hasn't won a race so far this season, and what a way to end the drought by
What
Vinokourov.
a fabulous ride by these two. It really is. Jens Voigt now 33.5 years of age and never won a classic race, but he's been the man of many, many bike races around the world. A great stage race rider, once the amateur rider in the world of the year. Now heading for the kilometre kite. There it is. They can't have expected to see that in the lead, just the two of them. They have been tremendous. And remember, it wasn't just the breakaway. How hard did they work before they finalised the breakaway? Bettini, I think, is beginning to think of third place. He knows he's probably got a great sprint, but I don't think Cadel Evans and Bogart will take him on in the finish.
I doubt it, but what they're still hoping is these two riders will crack down towards the end. Look at Voigt looking across there at the face of Alexander Vinokourov to see if he can feel any sign of weakness at all. Vinokourov looking over his shoulder to see how far back the main field or the main chasers are. And on this long straight up to the outskirts of the finishing line in Ons, you can see the group coming across, but certainly they shouldn't be able to close it down.
They almost want to play this one fair. They don't want to slipstream each other. They're trying to go side by side. We'd love that clock back, because that group behind is going to be closing in while they ride at this speed. As we're now getting around about 500 meters to go, Bob Roll's going to tell us who's going to win.
Vinokourov.
Oh, I'll go for Jens Voigt then.
I'm saying nothing. I always was a coward. This is Michael Bogart now. He knows he must be approaching the kilometre there. It's not going to happen. They are now thinking of third place. These boys are first and second. They're playing it absolutely as two perfect teammates or rivals here. They're going to go to the line, and may the best sprinter take it side by side.
Looking across there, they're getting up to the left-hand turn, and when they straighten up into that left-hand turn, there's around about 300 meters to go. But when you've put so much energy into the success of a breakaway like this, you have to make sure you've got something left for the last 50 meters to finish it off. Voigt keeps looking, but look at that. Cadel Evans is absolutely flying. He's battling it out with some of the best bike riders in the world. Michael Bogart just managing to pull himself back there, and I think Bob's right. Bettini's just happy to be there today.
He'll still get third, Bettini.
We saw Vinokourov lose a stage in Paris-Nice earlier this year doing just this thing, looking around at the other rider in his breakaway with him. So he might have left it a little bit too late in that particular stage of Paris-Nice, but I think he's got it all right today. Vinokourov tacked onto the wheel, looking at Jens Voigt, waiting for him to make the move, and then he'll try with everything he has to get to the finish line first.
Well, if faces win, I guess it's going to be Vinokourov, because he's not trying to fool anybody. Jens Voigt's displaying all of the pain on his face. Now they go. They've ridden this final kilometre as two gentlemen side by side. Winner takes all. Watch out for Voigt. And no, Vinokourov has got a length on him. Alexander Vinokourov, who was on the podium in third last year, now becomes the first rider from Kazakhstan to win it. In second place, a brilliant Jens Voigt. Best finish by a German rider for many, many years, as now the pack come through. But I think Cadel Evans is still clear.
I think Michael Bogart came across the line there, because here is Cadel Evans coming up for fourth place with Bettini right on his wheel, and David Echeverria is not too far away. Actually, I think that is Vicioso coming up for fifth.
Well, Bettini got the place behind Bogart. He'll get fourth. Fifth would be Cadel Evans as the pack comes in. I think we've witnessed one of the best Liège-Bastogne-Liège for many, many years. 6.5 hours. They're finishing a bang on schedule today. A very fast average speed. The clock will continue to count, Paul, but what a great result.
It's been a most magnificent Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It's difficult to count how many attacks and counter-attacks there have been since the start of aggression around about the Côte d'Ivoire. But here is the winner, Alexander Vinokourov, breaking a very long drought here by T-Mobile. A well-earned sprint for him, Bob. These two riders put everything into it.
The dry spell is over for T-Mobile, and let the heavens open up and the rain come down. Vinokourov, he's had a tough spring so far, and he's put that all in the back of his mind. And T-Mobile, very emotional win for Vinokourov. What a great job. You can't take anything away, however, from Jens Voigt, who did an incredible ride himself. Just didn't quite have enough in the end to hold off one of the best sprinters in the game, Alexander Vinokourov.
And let us not forget what we said at the beginning was the attack by Stefan Westermann. Why did he do it? It was to soften the race up in the hope that they could finish off with a win, and it's worked for them. Tactics sometimes seem very simple when they work out.
And when they work out, and this is why Stefan Westermann wanted to toughen up the race, it was either for Matthias Kessler or for Alexander Vinokourov, but he really wanted it this afternoon. Look at the face on him as he comes up to the line here. Jens Voigt, the man who put most of the effort into the success of this breakaway, just did not have the acceleration at the end of 260 kilometers, while the spontaneity is still there in the pedaling action of the man from Kazakhstan, who gets himself the first win for his country in Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
So Vinokourov has suddenly realised T-Mobile are back in business, and what a way to come back. Third last year, the winner this time around for Alexander Vinokourov. Jens Voigt, the man of the race. I think we've got to agree with that.
Yes, absolutely, the man of the race. CSC giving him the chance to try for the win. He came desperately close. I think put in maybe a little bit too much effort during the breakaway, but that's his nature. And he went straight to the finish line, got second place. You can't take anything away from Vinokourov, the winner of the race. There's Danilo De Luca, who won the last two races on the Gallop, Amstel Gold and Flèche Wallonne, but it will not happen today, feeling a lot of the pressure, I think, that has been heaped upon him by the media and the fans alike throughout the week leading up to Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Had to do a lot of work earlier on in the race, closing gaps, and Vinokourov was the strongest man today, I think you have to agree, and the best tactician. T-Mobile playing a perfect game, but Jens Voigt very, very strong himself.
I think with Danilo De Luca, he hasn't lost form or anything like that, or he's probably not even tired from the two victories. It's the fact that they attacked him one-on-one, and you can't control everybody. He's coming in the end over 3.5 minutes down, and lost interest in whether he finishes 15th or 25th. Doesn't really matter to him right now.
I think an important thing to take out of Liège-Bastogne-Liège is he's the first place rider from Liege as well, so he wasn't really surrounded by a very strong team in a race like Liège-Bastogne-Liège here this afternoon. Vinokourov there starting the sprint, and it looks as if Jens Voigt's trying to get the turbo to kick in, but it just wasn't working. I think it was all jammed up at that moment.
Well, Jens was never a noted sprinter. He's won stage of the Tour de France as well, but today he was a brilliant second, and Vinokourov promised so much and delivered in the end. T-Mobile can now walk proudly through the cycle ranks over the next few weeks, because they're finally in the street with number one on the door again. Big effort, this serious effort from a team that got it right on the day. Look at the pumping of those big legs here from Alexander Vinokourov. First win of the season. Late in coming this year for Alexander, never mind T-Mobile, but he is a man who could well be annoying, shall we say, to Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France. There's the result confirmed then. Alexander Vinokourov, the first rider from Kazakhstan to win Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It's only taken just over 100 years. Jens Voigt in second place, Bogart third, Bettini in fourth, Cadel Evans fifth. They were the five animators towards the end. David Echeverrier recovered well to get sixth, and Miguel Angel Martin Perdiguero is his full name. He was in seventh, Celestino eighth, and Cunego doing well there to take the ninth place. Smiles all round then for the man who's also brought his team back into the real world of professional bike riding, because now they've got a big win under their belt, when normally by this stage of the season they are dominating with wins. So it looks as though they might turn the year 2005 around after all. So Alexander Vinokurov is the champion. I hope you've enjoyed the coverage. For Bob Roll, I'm Phil Liggett, alongside me Paul Sherwin. Goodbye until the next time.